Chapter 431. Neither of them expected it to be the other. Yan Zhuixing didn't expect Yu Qianzhou to be sitting in this strange fellow and watching the show. He seemed to be very relaxed and was even holding a coconut in his hand. Yu Qianzhou was even more surprised. He didn't expect this fellow to be able to fly. This required at least a tribulation initial stage cultivation to be able to do so. Damn it. I thought my cultivation had increased very quickly. I didn't expect there to be someone even more abnormal. Yu Qianzhou looked at Yan Zhuixing's feet again and again. He really didn't see any flying artifact under Yan Zhuixing's feet. In addition, he couldn't see through Yan Zhuixing's cultivation at all. He had no choice but to accept the conclusion that Yan Zhuixing was stronger than him. I am really overjoyed to be able to see Brother Yu here. Could it be that Brother Yu isn't willing to come out and have a chat? Yan Zhuixing's face revealed a sincere smile. It couldn't be described as sincere. It should be described as happy. It seemed like he was about to get his wish fulfilled. When Manhu and the others saw Yu Qianzhou, they immediately thought about how their second brother had died in the blade drawing event. The anger on their faces couldn't be concealed even if they wanted to. It was as if they wanted to vent the hatred in their hearts. In addition, they received a message from their master. They didn't have to worry about Zi anymore. This made them even more determined to take revenge. Damn it. What kind of crappy aircraft is this? Its soundproofing is actually so bad. Yu Qianzhou awkwardly waved his hand at them and said, "Brother Yan, please wait for a moment. I will be right there." He quickly walked outside and waved his hand to summon a team leader. He whispered into his ear, "A strong enemy has arrived. Immediately inform the other 3 flying artifacts to close all the hatches. Inform the people in the sea to temporarily hide in the sea. It won't be long before the reinforcements from the Wuxia Alliance arrive. We will be safe then." "Mister, we are willing to go out and fight," a team leader pleaded. It was obvious that he didn't want to be a coward. Zi also nodded her head heavily. She had already taken out a purplish-black bamboo. Her entire body was filled with fighting spirit. "Fight my ass." 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence cultivators already cost us 200 brothers. Now there are 6 late-stage tribulation transcendence cultivators outside. If you go out, you'll just die. It depends on the situation. As Yu Qianzhou spoke, his expression darkened. "Since when can orders be bargained over? Carry out the order." "Yes." The pair of captains immediately passed down the order. The main mechanism of the 4 flying artifacts was activated almost at the same time. All the cabins and protective shells were tightly shut with a whoosh. Yan Zhuixing, Manhu, and the others were stunned by the movements of the flight-type artifacts in front of them. Needless to say, Yu Qianzhou would definitely not come out. It seemed like he had made up his mind to hide inside. The few of them felt like they had been fooled. Yan Zhuixing's face was gloomy. He tried to keep his tone calm and said, "Brother Yu, what do you mean? I've heard that you're extremely daring and there's nothing you don't dare to do. Could it be that Brother Yu is afraid of me? Or is it that you naturally like to bully the weak and fear the strong? You're actually trying to goad me into action. This is a trick that I won't play anymore after I get tired of it." Yu Qianzhou revealed a mocking expression. He patted the wall made of nether iron, creating a few muffled sounds. He looked around and nodded in satisfaction. He wobbled back to the rear cabin and jumped onto the bed. He laid on his side and propped his head up with one hand. He smiled proudly and said, "Brother Yan, you are wrong. Back then, Brother Yan and I were like old friends at first sight, so we addressed each other as brothers. How could I be afraid of you? It's just that Brother Yan's cultivation has increased by leaps and bounds. I want to test Brother Yan to see if Brother Yan can open my flight-type artifacts. I have no other intentions." Yan Zhuixing's expression twitched. He knew that anything else he said would be nonsense. Yu Qianzhou would definitely not come out. Shameless. Manhu angrily shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, you want to rely on a few flight-type artifacts to protect your life? You're simply delusional." Yu Qianzhou leaned on the bed and grinned, saying, "Brother Yan, you are a refined and cultured person, so why would you get mixed up with a bunch of roaming ruffians? It's truly a pity." "Ah. Don't talk nonsense with him. Let's attack together and break it. I want to see where he can hide." Manhu waved his hand at his junior brothers. They nodded and a cold light flew out from their storage pouches. 6 flying swords flew into the sky. "Brothers, cover your ears," Yu Qianzhou shouted. He took the lead and grabbed a blanket to cover his ears. The others were not stupid. Hearing the words outside, they naturally knew what was going to happen. They all stuffed their index fingers into their ears. The 6 junior brothers pointed their fingers and 6 cold lights shot down like lightning. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The flight-type artifact that was hit by the 6 flying swords was instantly shaken down by 40 to 50 meters. The people inside were shaken to the point that they hit the roof of the cabin and fell down. Xianxia even bounced up from his bed and rolled a few times on the cabin floor. A pile of coconuts also rolled around. He crawled up and quickly ran back and forth. Finding that the flight-type artifact was fine, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Then he continued to cover his ears. He was already prepared to suffer another blow. Lu Qing and Yo Sen, who were floating in the air, looked at each other in dismay. They did not expect that Xianxia would actually hide inside and not come out. It was a bit inconsistent with his arrogant and domineering character. Man Hu and the others chased after the flight-type artifact and looked at it. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They only saw a few slight dents on the surface. The degree of destruction that they had imagined did not appear at all. It was truly beyond their expectations. Old Seven clicked his tongue and said, "Good heavens! What material is this flight-type artifact made of? It is unexpectedly so sturdy and reliable. No wonder this guy would rather hide like a turtle. I don't believe that the 6 of us can't break a flight-type artifact with our cultivation. Let's give it a hard blow." Man Hu called out. The 6 of them grasped their flying swords in their hands. In an instant, 6 huge astral swords appeared in the sky. There was no need for them to call out. The 6 of them exerted their strength at the same time. The 6 huge astral swords whistled as they wildly chopped down. Bang! The sound shook the sky. Even the people who were fighting in the distance were startled. They took a glance at the scene. Seeing that it had nothing to do with them, they continued to fight. The flight-type artifact directly fell to the surface of the sea, creating huge waves. It sank a few meters before rising up again. The people inside the artifact were shaken to the point of staggering. They looked at each other with a bitter smile. This feeling was truly unpleasant. Fortunately, they didn't suffer any injuries due to their cultivation. The few of them chased after the artifact to the surface of the sea to check. Although the attack was strong enough and the dent was a little deeper, it was clearly far from being able to destroy it. They had never heard of such a sturdy flight-type artifact before. Yan Zhuixing's expression changed again. He was truly unwilling to let Xianxia off just like that. However, even with the 6 of them using their full strength, they still couldn't break it open. There was nothing he could do. He couldn't help but laugh out of extreme anger. "Brother Yu, the feeling inside must not be pleasant, right? You really can endure it? Brat, don't jump around. There will be a time when I will deal with you." Xianxia shook his head and forced a smile. "Brother Yin, you might not know this, but these flight-type artifacts cost a lot. The anti-vibration facilities inside can be said to be unique in the cultivation world. It's a pity that I can't invite Brother Yen to experience it together." Zi, who was shocked to the point that her expression changed slightly, rolled her eyes at him. It was as if she was saying, "You're just trying to impress yourself." Xianxia smiled bitterly at her helplessly and continued. "By the way, as brothers, I have something to remind you. You have to be careful. The people who are fighting with you now are just bait. Later, you carefully observe the east and south sides of Wuxia Island. A large number of experts from the Cultivation Alliance will take advantage of the emptiness of Wuxia Island to massacre Wuxia Island. Brother Yin, if you have any relatives, friends, or valuables, it's better to move them in advance. Otherwise, it'll be too late to regret it. Don't blame me for not reminding you." Ah. His words made everyone's expression change. For Yan Zhuixing, apart from his father, there was also his father and son's assets on Wuxia Island. If it was really as Xianxia said, then it would be a big problem. Man Hu and the rest of the disciples from the Great Snow Mountain were mostly on the island. They were also a little shocked. Although they guessed that what Xianxia said was a lie, they still looked to the east and west subconsciously. In fact, Xianxia's words were just speculation, but it was not a wild guess. According to various signs, the Cultivation Alliance was slowly falling into a disadvantageous position. The previous arrogant deployment was obviously no longer effective. Since the people on the east and west sides could not play a role, they must be transferred to support here. Otherwise, it would be a problem for them to retreat here safely. Wuxia Island would definitely pursue them and give the Cultivation Alliance a heavy blow. "Brother Yu, it seems that you want to send us away. I guess it's not as comfortable as you said." Yan Zhuixing thought that he had seen through Xianxia's trick. He shouted in a deep voice, "State Preceptor, don't be merciful. Continue to fight. Let Brother Yu enjoy it." "Bastard." Xianxia cursed in his heart. Just as he was about to plug his ears again, he heard someone shouting outside, "Not good. Eldest senior brother, young palace master, look. Damn it. Trying to fool me with such a small trick." Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and plugged his ears tightly. Ziyi was startled, but she had always believed in his judgment. So she plugged her ears as well. It was hard for the people outside to imagine the deafening feeling inside the metal space. Even Ziyi, who was at the end of the tribulation stage, felt a little overwhelmed. Yan Zhuixing, Man Hu, and the others looked in the direction that seventh brother was pointing. Their faces suddenly changed. Looking from afar, they could see dense gray shadows advancing in the east and west direction. Damn it! What this guy said is true. Man Hu looked at the flying artifact that was still swaying on the sea. Brother Yu, thank you for your advice. I will definitely repay you in the future. When Yan Zhuixing said this, a ghostly cultivator's baleful aura surged out from his body. It could be seen that not being able to kill Yu Qianzhou made him very angry. However, there was no other way. So, he waved his hand and said, "Return to Limitless Island." The few of them quickly left. Yu Qianzhou waited inside for a while. Seeing that there was no movement, he quietly loosened his ears. He looked left and right with a face full of suspicion. Could it be that these guys really left? He paced back and forth in the cabin. He wanted to release his divine sense to investigate. However, the attribute of the nether metal was too strange. It could block divine sense. The people outside were unable to investigate the inside, and the people inside were also unable to investigate the outside. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and made a judgment in his heart. It was impossible for Yan Zhuixing and the others to waste time with him at this time. He walked out of the cabin and looked at everyone. Then he carefully opened a small window and looked outside. Just as he expected, there was a large number of people rushing over from the east and south. Yu Qianzhou immediately clapped his hands and laughed. "It's all right. Let's go up. Inform the people in the sea to continue. Tell them that a large number of storage bags will fall down soon. However, tell them to be prepared to retreat at any time. This battle won't last long." The flying artifact rose into the sky again. The protective shell at the back of the cabin opened up again. Yu Qianzhou lifted his leg and hooked a coconut. After casually taking care of it, he continued to watch the show with great interest. Ziyi looked at the situation outside and looked at him with a face full of surprise. She asked, "How did you know that people from the east and south would come?" Yu Qianzhou raised his hand and pointed at his head. He said arrogantly, "Brain. It's because of my brain. Now you understand why my master gave me such an important mission, right? That's why you should listen to me." Ziyi pouted but didn't refute. She turned her head and looked at the intense battle in the distance. Yan Zhuixing's group of 7 quickly rushed through the battlefield. Man Hu shouted, "Everyone, the enemy has sent a large number of reinforcements. You must inform all the people on the island to fight." Actually, there was no need for him to say it. Everyone had already noticed it. There was a long whistle in the sky. Countless people immediately flew up from Wuxia Island. A flying sword flew towards the flying Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing let out a sharp cry. His hands were suddenly enveloped by 2 balls of black mist. His claws were like a phantom as he grabbed the flying sword. He clenched his hands together and an ear-piercing creaking sound could be heard. The flying sword was immediately twisted into a ball and was casually thrown away. Although the person who released the flying sword was in the nascent soul realm, he was also shocked and tried to escape. However, Yan Zhuixing's figure flickered and immediately caught up. He stabbed his claw into the cultivator's back and carried him away. When Yan Zhuixing threw him away, the cultivator was already a dried corpse falling into the sea. The surrounding people were so shocked by this strange and terrifying attack that no one dared to get close, including the people from Everlasting Island. They looked at each other in shock, not expecting Yan Zhuixing to be so powerful. They all made way for the 7 of them, allowing them to quickly fly towards Everlasting Island. Yuan Jiokue and Duan Tianbua obviously didn't expect such a situation to occur. If their main force was crippled, what would happen? Therefore, when the people from Wuxia Island came to stop them, they didn't get entangled. They directly ordered the experts in the late stage of tribulation passing stage to quickly rescue them. Most of the experts immediately escaped and rushed to the main battlefield. It was a pity that those small sects couldn't get away for a while. They had no choice but to play the role of blocking and delaying. There was no need to describe their miserable ending. With the arrival of dozens of experts in the late stage of tribulation passing stage, the situation of the fight at the top immediately changed. The Cultivation Alliance immediately counterattacked. Chang Mandong, the old man in embroidered clothes, suddenly heard a shrill scream coming from behind him. He looked back and saw a cultivator who was guarding behind him being attacked by 3 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing stage. The cultivator was accidentally cut in half at the waist. Chang Mandong immediately cried out in grief, "Junior martial brother Chiu?" 4 of his fellow disciples came, but now 2 of them were dead. How could he explain this to his master? However, after the 3 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing stage killed Chang Mandong's junior martial brother, they immediately rushed towards him. Chang Mandong was shocked. He couldn't care less about his grief. He turned around and desperately fought off the entangled opponents, then forcibly flew into the sky and escaped. Chapter 432. After the man surnamed Chiu was killed, as soon as he fell into the sea, someone immediately dragged his body into the water, and the storage bag at his waist was instantly taken away. A group of special forces in the early stage of tribulation passing could easily hold their breath in the water for 2 to 4 hours. It was a clean and neat job. But at this moment, a group of special forces received the order to retreat, so they quickly retreated through the blood-stained seawater, rushed into the blue sea and quickly washed themselves clean. The flying artifact that was waiting for them on the surface of the sea opened a hatch with its back facing the direction of the battle. Dozens of people sneakily flashed back again. The hatch closed and the flying artifact quickly rose into the sky. Ziyi looked at the movement below, and then looked at the sea where people were still falling. She wondered, "We should still be able to collect a lot of storage bags. Why did you ask them to retreat?" Next to him, Captain 1 also nodded slightly, expressing the same doubt. Xianxia smiled slightly and said, "If we continue to fight, we will lose 800 men to kill 1,000 of the enemy. Which sect in the Cultivation Alliance is willing to do this? I believe it won't be long before they retreat. By then our people will still be down there, and we will become the target of Wuxia Island's anger. Going too far is as bad as not going far enough. Captain 1 ordered us to retreat. Let's go back to Wanghai town first." The order was passed down, and the 4 flying artifacts quickly rose into the sky and flew back to the west. Not long after they left, the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance was indeed fighting and retreating, while Wuxi Island was in hot pursuit. However, when they were close to Wanghai town, they finally retreated unwillingly. After all, they were close to the enemy's base camp, and it would be bad if they were ambushed. As soon as the 4 flying artifacts returned, Xianxia and Ziyi immediately came out and went to the cabin of another ship. They saw several piles of storage bags on the cabin board. Ziyi's eyes lit up, while Xianxia rubbed his hands excitedly and asked, "How many storage bags are there?" Captain 2 replied, "About 3,000. In that case, at least 3,000 people died in the battle between the 2 sides. Not bad." Xianxia smiled and waved his hand. "Send a few people to stand guard outside and close the cabin door. Don't let anyone get close. Categorize the items inside and don't mix them up. Let's see what we got this time. Alright, put the spirit stones in different grades, don't mix them together." With a wave of his hand, a dozen or so people immediately surrounded each pile of storage bags. Each of them picked up the storage bags and quickly sorted out the things inside. Immediately, the dazzling sound of spirit stones clattered incessantly. All kinds of bottles containing medicinal pills also clattered and collided with each other. There were also many magic tools in a mess. When the people of Everlasting Island returned to the sea region where the fierce battle took place, the cultivators of various countries immediately sent many people to the sea to salvage the storage bags of their cultivators. As for the storage bags of the cultivators of the Chinese cultivation world, they would naturally belong to whoever found them. Chang Mandong of the 2, and nation impatiently gathered all the disciples around him. Even he himself quickly dived into the sea, roughly at the spot where his junior brother had fallen into the sea. The cultivators of various countries looked at him with some surprise. Chang Mandong's actions were somewhat puzzling, so many people stopped in the air and didn't return. However, they didn't know that the storage bag on Chang Mandong's junior brother contained a very important item. Furthermore, there were a large number of spirit stones inside. Chang Mandong definitely couldn't let it fall into the hands of others. Because the smell of blood was too strong, it had already attracted countless sharks. Chang Mandong casually killed 7 or 8 of them the moment he entered the sea. Fortunately, the sea here wasn't too deep, and the sea water was already filled with blood. The line of sight was still good. After a few dozen meters, they reached the bottom of the sea. At this time, there were corpses everywhere, attracting all kinds of carnivores in the sea. After a group of people dived into the sea to search, they were immediately shocked to find that the storage bags on almost everyone's waist were gone. Only a small number of corpses could still be seen. Chang Mondong's heart immediately sank. He sent a voice transmission to the people of his sect to find his junior brother's corpse at all costs. Seeing that there was no harvest, the cultivators of other countries all floated to the sea and reported the strange things that had happened here. Only Chang Mondong's sect was still searching everywhere. Hard work pays off. In addition, the people of his sect were quite familiar with the appearance of Senior Chiu. Finally, they found the two parts of the corpse. Chang Mandong saw that the rope of the storage bag on the waist of the corpse seemed to have been cut by a sharp weapon. It was obviously done by someone. Suddenly, his scalp felt a little numb. After the cultivators of various countries received the report, they were also shocked. Someone actually took advantage of the battle to hide in the sea and reap the benefits. Who did it? It was really puzzling. After the Cultivation Alliance returned from the battle, as soon as they returned to Wanghai town, the important figures of each sect gathered together to discuss the reasons for the defeat this time. Of course, arrogance was the reason that everyone knew, but it was inevitable that they would blame each other. However, the unluckiest ones were the small sections. Not only did they suffer heavy losses, but they also had no right to blame anyone. They could only grit their teeth with ashen faces. After arguing for a long time, they could not come to any conclusion. After a while, everyone felt that something was missing. After thinking about it carefully, they realized that Yu Qianshou was not there. In this battle, Yu Qianshou had a power weapon, but he did not make a move. It was really infuriating, and he was immediately condemned by everyone. Under the crowd's agitation, Lu Qing had to shout, "Someone go and invite Yu Qianshou here." Immediately, a disciple of Fuxian Island received the order and left. They did not know that Yu Qianshou was immersed in the joy of everyone dying and him becoming rich. He did not have the mood to come here to discuss. Moreover, no one informed him, so he would not take the initiative to come. In the flying instrument, Ziyi also took the initiative to organize the things in the storage bag with everyone. Suddenly, a team member next to her who was carrying a storage bag exclaimed, "There are quite a lot of spiritual stones in this storage bag. There are more than 50 million superior-grade spiritual stones." Yu Qianshou, who was sitting at the side waiting for the result, suddenly had his eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, "Ordinary disciples can't carry so much money. It must be an important person. Throw it over and let me see." The team member immediately threw the storage bag over. Yu Qianshou caught the bag and injected his divine sense into it. He immediately chuckled and said, "Yo! It has the capacity of 3 rooms. TSK, almost 60 million. Which unlucky guy did it? I have to check the things inside to see if there is any identification." In the end, after rummaging through a pile of miscellaneous things, he could not see who it belonged to. However, he was sure that it was definitely not a wuxia cultivators. This could be seen from the clothes inside the storage bag. Finally, a medium-sized wooden box inside the storage bag caught Yu Qianshou's attention. He casually took it out and placed it on the deck. He rubbed his hands and laughed at everyone. "I hope we can find some treasure inside." Everyone laughed and stared curiously at the box. Ziyi even widened her eyes and approached it cutely. Women were naturally immune to treasure chests and the like. After whetting everyone's appetite, Yu Qianshou directly opened the lid. When they saw what was inside, everyone's eyes immediately showed disappointment. The box was filled with a pile of jade archives. How could there be any treasure inside? What kind of lousy jade archives were these? Why did they have to put them in a box? Yu Qianshou had a suspicious look on his face. He reached out and picked up a piece, then injected his divine sense into it to examine it. After looking through it, his expression was slightly stunned. He swept his gaze across everyone, then took out a few more to examine. The more Yu Qianshou looked, the stranger his expression became. Ziyi's face was filled with curiosity. She moved her pretty face over and squeezed out a smile to flatter him. She asked, "Yu Qianshou, what is inside?" It seemed that a woman's curiosity was not something a man could compare to. She was actually trying to please Yu Qianshou just for this. Yu Qianshou glanced at her but did not reply. He placed the jade archives back into the box, then released his divine sense to check the number of jade archives in the box. He found that there were 317 of them. He rubbed his chin and thought for a while, then turned his head and asked, "Ziyi, do you know how many countries there are in this world? I heard from my master that there are 319 countries, big and small." "Most of them are small countries," Ziyi replied casually. She then asked, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong with this jade archive?" As she spoke, she took out a jade archive for herself to examine. "You guys continue." Yu Qianshou instructed his team members, then walked in a circle with his hands behind his back. He frowned and muttered to himself, 319. There are 317 countries here and 2 are missing. It seems that the problem lies with these 2 missing countries. The items in the box were not treasures, but in the eyes of some people, they were even more precious than that. Every jade archive recorded the detailed topography and topography of a country, as well as a general introduction to the country. For example, the location of the city walls, the population of the city, the arrangement of the military forces, the customs, the conditions of the roads, everything was recorded without missing a single detail. Every single one of these jade archives could be used as a strategic map. What was most surprising was that there were detailed introductions to the cultivation sects in the country. Even the number of spirit stone mines and spirit stone production were recorded. Yu Qianzhou shook his head in amazement. There were more than 300 countries. How long did it take to create all these jade archives? The person who created this must be someone with evil intentions. Needless to say, the person who had the ability to do this must be a cultivation sect. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have such a clear understanding of the situation in the cultivation world. And here I was wondering what had caused you to go through so much trouble. So it's just a bunch of maps. Ziyi pouted and casually tossed the jade archives back into the box. A loud clang rang out, startling Yu Qianzhou, who was deep in thought. Under Ziyi's astonished gaze, he took out the jade archives and examined them. Seeing that they were all fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, "My little ancestor, Ziyi, the things in here are all priceless treasures. Do you know how much money you're throwing away if you break even one of them?" His words gave Ziyi a fright. She asked, slightly embarrassed, "Are they really that valuable?" "Of course. Why would I lie to you?" "All right." Yu Qianzhou changed the topic and asked, "Can you remember the names of those 300 countries? My master has traveled to each country and told me about them. However, I don't really remember them. I only have a vague impression of them." Ziyi was a little embarrassed. But before she could finish speaking, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said, "It's all right. Take a look at each jade archive and see which 2 countries are missing." Chapter 433. Without another word, Ziyi immediately picked up the jade archives and examined them one by one. She was very serious, and 2 small wrinkles appeared on her smooth forehead. Yu Qianzhou smiled slightly. It was most reassuring to see a simple-minded person doing such a thing. The cabin door opened, and a member walked in reporting, "Sir, someone from supporting Immortal Island is looking for you." Yu Qianzhou tilted his head and stared at Ziyi, who was squatting there, as he casually asked, "What's the matter?" The member replied, "They said that the Cultivation Alliance is looking for you, and they want you to make a trip there." "The Cultivation Alliance is looking for me?" Yu Qianzhou raised his brows and chuckled. With his hands behind his back, he slowly walked out. Outside, a disciple of supporting Immortal Island was stopped when he was about 20 meters away from the flying artifact. "Sir, say no more. The Cultivation Alliance has always looked for me, but good things don't come knocking on their door. Let's go." Yu Qianzhou immediately interrupted him. A flying sword shot out from his sleeve and he stepped on it, heading toward the Cultivation Alliance. The disciple of supporting Immortal Island was stunned, but he quickly followed. As soon as he arrived, the various sects' denouncing expressions were clear on their faces. Yu Qianzhou swept his gaze across them, then walked into the crowd expressionlessly. He cupped his fists at the crowd and said, "Everyone, why have you summoned me so urgently? Actually, there's no need to ask. I've never seen the Cultivation Alliance look for me for anything good. But are you all trying to drown me with your spit, or are you trying to pin a crime on me?" The various sects' idle mouths and their anger were immediately stuck in their throats. Even if they wanted to spit it out, they had to sort it out first. The atmosphere was immediately dampened. Someone from the Luo sect coughed. An old man slowly took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Yu Qianzhou, when the various sects are fighting against external enemies and fighting to the death, why are you lone cultivators hiding at the side and turning a blind eye to it? Do you really not see yourself as a member of the Cultivation Alliance?" "Yo." An old acquaintance. A smile appeared on Yu Qianzhou's face. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior Su Qianzhou of the Daluo sect." Back then, when the 3 major sects of the righteous and demonic sects were training in the demon domain, Junior met Senior once. After so many years, this Junior has often missed Senior. I didn't think that Senior would still remember this Junior. This is really Junior's honor. The top 3 sects of the righteous path and devil path are having a trial in the demon domain. The sects who didn't know what was going on all looked at each other inquisitively. Everyone had heard that the top 3 sects of the orthodox path and the devil path would go to the demon domain to have a competition every few years. The results of the competition had always been kept secret. How did it become a trial? Isn't this a competition? The expressions of the 6 sects involved changed. There was indeed such a thing, but ever since they had been warned by the mysterious expert, the 6 sects had never gone there again. Actually, it wasn't a big deal to say it out loud, but it would definitely affect the prestige of the 6 sects in the righteous and demonic sects. If they encountered people who wanted to sow discord, it would be more or less troublesome. For example, xianxia in front of them was an expert at stirring up trouble. The other 5 sects involved all looked at supporting Immortal Island as if saying that they were all good people from supporting Immortal Island. Lu Qing of supporting Immortal Island frowned and said, "Xianxia, if you want to reminisce with Elder Su, now isn't the time. Let's get back to business. It's good that you know the taboo." Xianxia sneered at Su Qianhuan as if saying, "You've reminded me. If you hadn't come out, I would have almost forgotten about this." Actually, he was just giving a warning. Even if he really wanted to sow discord, he wouldn't do it. Some things couldn't be kept a secret. If it was spread out, who would dare to cooperate with him in the future? This was the golden rule that he had learned from his previous life. If it didn't reach the point of life and death, he couldn't make a big deal out of it. That way there might still be opportunities for cooperation in the future. After all, everyone was in the cultivation world. He couldn't cut off all paths of retreat. Let's get back to business. After laughing, Xianxia's expression turned solemn. "Elder Su, you've gone too far. We itinerant cultivators have been waiting for an opportunity. How could we just stand by and watch? This is something that everyone can see." Su Qianhuan looked at the others as if he wanted them to say something. Just now, because of the conflict between Daluo sect and Xianxia, he couldn't help but jump out first. In the end, he suffered a loss. Now that Xianxia had gotten back to business, if he continued to harp on it, he was afraid that Xianxia would throw caution to the wind. It was better to endure it for now. "Did anyone see that I just stood by and watched? That's pure bullsh*t. Xianxia looked around and raised his arms as he said loudly, "We itinerant cultivators attracted the attention of 7 tribulation-passing experts from Limitless Island. 6 of them were at the final stage of the tribulation-passing stage. We fought them to the end. Did everyone really not see that? Didn't this reduce the pressure on the sects? If this is considered as standing by and watching, then there's no justice in this world." The sects that had participated in the trial in the Demon Ghost region were temporarily silent. Without the leaders of these 6 sects, the original fiery anger of the crowd was immediately extinguished, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over it. Xianxia felt proud of himself, secretly praising himself for having achieved the miraculous effect of using 4 tails to overcome 1,000 caddies. As he looked left and right, he suddenly saw the enchantress of 100 Charms throwing him a meaningful wink. He immediately lowered his head and pretended not to see anything. He was proud, but now he was ready to throw caution to the wind. Just when everyone thought that this matter was going to end, someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, "Xianxia, don't try to argue. Everyone knows that you didn't intend to fight from the beginning. When the 7 tribulation-passing experts found you, you also hid in the flying magic tool. How dare you say that you fought them to the end? How can you be so shameless?" Everyone was stunned, and their eyes all looked in the direction of the voice. Xianxia was stunned and thought that there was really someone who was stubborn. He immediately shouted, "Who is it? Who is it? Don't hide behind people's backs and hurt them. If you have the guts, come out and say it." "It's me. The elder of the Imperial Sword sect, Tu Yanfeng." That person shouted loudly, and the crowd immediately parted to make a path. An old man at the middle stage of the nascent soul realm stepped out angrily and stared at Xianxia without fear. When the various sects saw that it was him, they were all slightly stunned. A third-rate sect's elder actually dared to go against Xianxia without changing his name? Could it be that he didn't know that this brat was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance? With Xianxia's strength, it was a piece of cake for him to flatten the Imperial Sword sect. After the initial shock, everyone revealed a look of admiration, but then there was a look of mockery in their eyes. There were so many big sects here, so when did a third-rate sect have the right to speak? Xianxia looked at the person and found that the person's cultivation was similar to his, and he was from an unknown small sect. He was really surprised. When he entered the cultivation world, he joined the Ongquangtsung sect. It could be said that his starting point was quite high. After that, the sects he interacted with were all famous and big sects, and he really didn't have any contact with those small sections. I have always been in the upper echelon, so when did I offend the Imperial Sword Sect? Yu Qianzhou scratched his head in confusion, and then he respectfully said, Elder Tu, I have never met you before. Did I offend you in any way? You didn't offend me in any way, but I just can't stand your despicable face. You obviously have your own selfish motives, but you still want to twist words and force logic. I am deeply ashamed to be associated with people like you in the Cultivation Alliance. Tu Yanfeng pointed at Yu Qianzhou's nose and cursed. The crowd was in an uproar and they all whispered to each other, almost applauding and cheering. Yu Qianzhou's face darkened and he shouted, Tu Yanfeng, I have no enmity with you, and you dare to insult me in public? Do you think I'm afraid of you just because I don't belong to any sect? You don't have to be afraid of me and I don't have to be afraid of you. At most I will just die. Tu Yanfeng shouted back tit for tat. In this battle, all the disciples of the Imperial Sword Sect who came with me have died, and I am the only one left. I have no face to go back and face the sect leader. If you don't want to fight, that's your own business and it's not my place to talk about it. But you are here to argue, and it is simply an insult to the disciples of the Imperial Sword Sect who died in the battle. If I don't scold you, who will? If you are not convinced, do you dare to fight with me? People do not do good, but they all have good thoughts. When all the sects heard what he said, they were all filled with deep veneration, and no one dared to look down on him anymore. But when they thought of Yu Qianzhou's character of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, and Tu Yanfeng's challenge gave him an opportunity, they all sighed in their hearts, and thought that Tu Yanfeng's life was probably over. Yu Qianzhou's mouth was wide open and he was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he bowed deeply to Tu Yanfeng and said, Senior, you are loyal to the sect, and this junior admires you from the bottom of my heart. I misunderstood you just now. Yu Qianzhou's words were rude, but you misunderstood me too, Sai. Let's not talk about this kind of unspeakable secret. All the sects were stunned, and Tu Yanfeng, who was ready to fight to the death, was even more stunned. The anger that filled his chest had been mostly extinguished. At this moment, everyone clearly saw a humble, respectful, and virtuous junior. He was like a completely different person from the previous Yu Qianzhou. If you really have some unspeakable secret, why don't you say it? If what you said is reasonable, I'll apologize to you in front of everyone, Tu Yanfeng said after being stunned for a moment, and the aggressiveness in his tone was gone. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said with a bitter smile, Let's not talk about it anymore. If I continue, I'll inevitably be suspected of twisting words and forcing logic. Senior, you have a noble character and unquestionable integrity, and you dare to stand up and argue for what's right, and the loyal disciples of the Imperial Sword School, I, Yu Qianzhou, can only admire you. Senior, what you said was right. It's a shame to be associated with me, and I'm ashamed to face the loyal disciples of the Imperial Sword School who died in battle. So, if that's the case, I, Yu Qianzhou, announce in front of everyone that I and a group of rogue cultivators will withdraw from the Cultivation Alliance, and will no longer enjoy the protection of the Cultivation Alliance as punishment. All the sects were in an uproar and the four major families were all stunned. The Allure Beauty's eyes were filled with doubt, and her pair of bright eyes looked at Tu Yanfeng from time to time, and then glanced at Yu Qianzhou, thinking to herself, these two fellows seem to have taken the wrong medicine. Could it be that the two of them colluded to put on a show? What the hell is the little fox doing? Tu Yanfeng was dumbfounded. Yu Qianzhou, if you have something to say it, don't be so impulsive. So, my heart is towards the bright moon, but the bright moon shines in the ditch. Senior, you don't have to say any more. Actually, I can see that the Cultivation Alliance has a lot of misunderstandings about me. If that's the case, why should I stay and be hated by others? It's good that I leave. There will always be a place for me, Yu Qianzhou, in this big world. Whether I'm in the Cultivation Alliance or not, I'll support the Chinese cultivation world in the dark. My sincerity can be proven by the sun and the moon, Yu Qianzhou said, a little disheartened. Chapter 434. These words sounded strange to the Allure Beauty. According to her understanding of him, this guy was like a cockroach. The more you beat him, the faster he crawled. When the Daluo sect put a bounty on his head, the more pressure they put on him, the more he could fight back. That was why he secretly robbed their spirit stone mine. Could it be that he was really discouraged because of a few insults from Tu Yanfeng? The Allure Beauty's pretty face was full of suspicion. Her watery eyes stared at a certain someone, wondering what this little fox was trying to do. Tu Yanfeng had come to denounce him out of anger. Now that she was tormented by Yu Qianzhou, she lost all her temper. Instead, she felt that she had said something she shouldn't have. This guy was someone who dared to go against the head of the Daluo sect in the cultivation world. There was no doubt about his strength. Yesterday he had appeared out of nowhere and defeated 2 cultivators in the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. With his background, there was no need for him to treat her like this. Was he really hurt by her words? Tu Yanfeng didn't know what to say. He had never been so conspicuous among the sections. Looking around, the leaders of the sects looked at the sky and the ground but not at the two of them. It seemed that they didn't oppose Yu Qianzhou's decision to leave the cultivation alliance. In fact, the sects had already seen through him. If he was left in the cultivation alliance, it would be a dream to poach his people. If they wanted to use him, it would be even more troublesome. Instead, he would always make them feel disgusted. Out of sight and out of sight was the best solution. The sects couldn't say it out loud, but not saying anything was the best way to express their stance. It was clear that everyone wanted him to leave as soon as possible. Yu Qianzhou, you have to think about it carefully. After you leave this door, if anything happens to you in the future, it will have nothing to do with the cultivation alliance or the sections. Su Qingquan of the Daluo sect reminded him in a seemingly friendly manner. But how could a weasel pay respects to a chicken? The sects looked at Su Qingquan thoughtfully. His words were telling everyone that Yu Qianzhou wasn't a member of the cultivation alliance. If the Daluo sect came looking for trouble with him, please don't disturb him. Tu Yanfeng quickly waved his hand. Elder Su, I have no intention of forcing Yu Qianzhou out of the cultivation alliance. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes at him. You lack experience in the struggles of the upper echelons, so why did you come here to mess around? He waved his hand and said, Elder Tu, I appreciate your kindness, but I'm a man of my word. I've never gone back on my word. He cupped his hands at everyone and said, I'll take my leave now. He turned around and strode away. Tu Yanfeng quickly caught up and said, Yu Qianzhou, don't be impulsive. Let's talk this out. Yu Qianzhou stopped and looked at the old man speechlessly. Your men are all dead. Instead of worrying about yourself, you're worrying about me. Why don't you look at how everyone is looking at you? Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, he shook his head. Elder Tu, please stay. I've made up my mind. There's no need to hold me back. But before I leave, I'd like to ask Elder Tu to pass a message to your sect master. Tell him that if the Imperial Sword School encounters any trouble in the future, don't hesitate to use my name, Yu Qianzhou. As he said this, he glanced at the sects coldly. Then he threw out a flying sword and flew away. Tu Yanfeng was stunned. The people that the Imperial Sword School brought were all dead. Now they had found a backer. But he was not stupid. If Yu Qianzhou left the Cultivation Alliance, the Daluo sect would be the first to find him. If he wanted to be the backer of the Imperial Sword School, he had to protect his own life first. I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. Tai Junshan of the Corpse sect cupped his hands at everyone and flew away quickly. I'll take my leave too. The allure demon bowed slightly and flew in the same direction as Tai Junshan. Many people watched her leave, reminiscing the beauty of her graceful figure when she left. Then the 4 families, the Moon Clan and even the 10,000 demons took their leave. With the departure of so many sect leaders, the other sects also temporarily dispersed. Many people walked up to Tu Yanfeng and congratulated him. Congratulations on finding a good backer for your esteemed sect, haha. Tu Yanfeng didn't know if they were congratulating him or announcing his death. Subconsciously he looked at the Daluo sect. It seemed that a few people were staring at him expressionlessly. He quickly turned around and left. He was complaining in his heart. He hoped that his impulsiveness would not bring trouble to the sect. Next to the 4 flying instruments, Yu Qianzhou had just landed. Tai Junshan, the allure demon, Niu Sen, and Bai Shan of the 4 families had already arrived. Yu Qianzhou looked at them and knew what was going on. He smiled and said, Is there anything you need from me? Niu Sen's cultivation was the highest among them and he had no scruples. He immediately laughed and said, Yu Qianzhou, what do you want to do after leaving the Cultivation Alliance? His question was what the others wanted to ask. Yu Qianzhou smiled faintly and said, Thank you for your concern, senior. I can go anywhere. It's not a bad idea to wander around. Niu Sen nodded and said, Palace Master Bu sent me a message saying that she has an appointment with you. She also asked me to tell you that the 10,000 demons are waiting for you. I will go to the 10,000 demons in a few days to fulfill the appointment with Palace Master Bu. I hope Senior can help me inform her in advance. Ah, that's great. Then it's settled. I won't disturb you anymore. Goodbye. Niu Sen was straightforward. He didn't say anything else and quickly left after looking at them. Yu Qianshou sent Niu Sen off with cupped hands and looked at Tai Junshan. I Yu Qianshou am a man of my word. I will always remember what Elder Tai said. I will give you an answer within a month. There's no need to be anxious. Tai Junshan wanted to say something but stopped. He looked at everyone present and nodded slowly. In that case I won't disturb you anymore. Goodbye. After he left, Huarui from the Moon Clan asked, Yu Qianshou, my clan leader has something to discuss with you. Can you come to the Moon Clan again? Ziyi is going to the Moon Clan to admire the moon. I will find time to go with her as soon as possible. Seeing that he was so sensible, Huarui nodded and smiled. I won't disturb you anymore. Then she also left. Once Huarui left, Yu Qianshou immediately said to Bai Shan and the others, I will be making a trip to the Wu clan in the next few days. This isn't a good place to talk. You all have to be careful. This short sentence already reflected the difference between the 4 great clans and the top 3. Bai Shan and the others saw that he dealt with everyone so quickly and thought that he must have something to do. So they cupped their hands and said, Take care, sir. Then they all left. What do you mean by this is not the place to talk? Are you afraid that I am here? The allure enchantress pouted. Yu Qianshou had a headache as soon as he touched her. He smiled bitterly. I don't dare. Then he walked into the flying ritual implement. The allure enchantress didn't stand on ceremony and followed him in like it was her own home. Once she reached the back cabin, she found that Ziyi wasn't there. She asked curiously, Huh? Where is Ziyi? She's always by your side. Did you send her to do something bad again? Of course, Yu Qianshou wouldn't tell her what Ziyi was doing. He slowly lay down on the comfortable chair and said helplessly, Should I call you Palace Lord Yi, Chief Yi, or Masteress now? Looking at the man in front of her, the allure enchantress was slightly absent-minded. In the past she caught him like a little chick. Then he timidly used her. Now he was so calm in front of her. As his status in the cultivation world rose, he was no longer the same as before. He indeed had the right to look down on her. Hearing that, the allure enchantress gently bit her red lips and hid the disappointed expression on her face. She smiled charmingly and sat on the armrest of the chair. She said, You little fox, when you used me, you called me Masteress more than anyone else. Are you going to change your way of addressing me now? Then she lowered her head and whispered in Yu Qianshou's ear, Since you want to change your way of addressing me, I think you won't care about calling me Palace Lord or Chief Yi now. Why don't you just call me by my name? Call me Yi-kun. She said the last sentence in an enchanting voice that could make people feel ecstasy. Let's get back to the topic. Why are you looking for me? Yu Qianshou slightly tilted his head and broke away from the peerless beauty's breath beside his ear. He refused to dwell on this issue. Otherwise he was afraid that there would be a problem. What a man with a heart of steel. The allure enchantress poked his forehead with her slender finger. She got up and turned around to face him. She asked, Is Tu Yanfeng someone you arranged to deliberately put on a show with you? I didn't even know him before. How could I put on a show with him? Then should I boldly guess that Tu Yanfeng and the Imperial Sword School are going to be in big trouble? What? According to your usual style, he pointed at your nose and scolded you in public. How could you let him go? The allure enchantress covered her mouth and laughed. The past is the past and the present is the present. How can one not be flexible when dealing with people? This is not what a man should do. What's more? Yu Qianshou slowly turned his head and stared at the allure enchantress. He said indifferently, Do you think that I, Yu Qianshou, need to rely on an unknown Tu Yanfeng to fight for fame with my current reputation? Do you think that I, Yu Qianshou, need to rely on a small Imperial Sword School to prove myself with my current strength? Don't you think it's unnecessary to do that? There was no doubt that the arrogance in his words was unmistakable. It made people feel as if they had just seen his true face for the first time today. It was as if he was telling her that a real dragon would soar to the 9 heavens one day. The allure enchantress was stunned. After a while she asked in a muffled voice, What's your plan from now on? Are you going to hide for a few years and not see anyone again? I seem to have already answered this question, Niu Sen of the 10,000 demons. Why do you still ask? Yu Qianshou said coldly. The allure enchantress's expression was unpredictable. She bit her red lips and remained silent for a while. Finally she sighed and said, I have a hunch that you're going to a very far place for your sudden decision to leave the Cultivation Alliance. I wonder when we can meet again? If it's fated, we will naturally meet again. Yu Qianshou's tone was still cold and emotionless. The allure enchantress's face stiffened. She nodded and forced a smile. That's right. If it's fated, we will naturally meet again. If that's the case, I won't disturb you anymore. Then she left leisurely. After she left, Yu Qianzhou was alone. He lay there silently for a while. Then he stood up and stood at the window. He looked at the transparent crystal outside and murmured to himself, "I'm not stupid. How could I not understand what you're thinking? But can I really cross that line? In fact, you're the same as me. We're both hesitating." Chapter 435. He transferred to another flying artifact that was on alert. The items in his storage bag had already been sorted out. After listening to the report, Yu Qianzhou realized that there were very few valuable things. The total number of spirit stones was less than 70 million high-grade spirit stones. Just the storage bag that contained the treasure chest alone had close to 60 million. In other words, the other storage bags didn't even add up to 10 million. Yu Qianzhou was a little depressed. It turned out that there weren't many rich people in the cultivation world. Seeing Ziyi hiding in a corner and guarding the chest with her head lowered in deep thought, he walked over and asked, "Which two countries are missing inside?" Ziyi just realized that he was back and said with some embarrassment, "There's no one in China, but I can't remember which country it is." "Don't make things difficult for yourself if you can't remember." Yu Qianzhou comforted her. Actually, he also knew that there were more than 300 countries. Perhaps everyone knew the names, but not many people could name them one by one. However, there was one thing without a doubt. Although the map of China wasn't in the chest, the things inside were definitely not made by the people of China's cultivation world. It seemed like he had to check the foreign cultivators and find out which country's important people had died in this battle. Ordinary people wouldn't carry such a storage bag. After putting the chest away, Yu Qianzhou returned to his flying artifact and gave the order to set off. Their target was the Wu family of the four major families. After the various sects saw the four flying artifacts leave, they quickly sent the news of Yu Qianzhou leaving the Cultivation Alliance back to their sections. Then they went back to their own matters. After all, the most important thing at the moment was the battle with Wuxi Island. The only thing that everyone was concerned about was what the Daluo sect would do to Yu Qianzhou. No sect would let over 1,000 people die in vain. The four major families had already received the news that Yu Qianzhou was coming. The four family heads gathered at the Wu family. It was not convenient for Yu Qianzhou to teleport here with Ziyi, so he could only fly over. When they were not far from the Wu family, they found a secluded mountain and sent Purple Robe away. They temporarily sent the 400-odd team members back to Utopia and put away the four flying magical artifacts. Then they gathered some firewood and piled it up. When Ziyi came back with two wild animals that Yu Qianzhou wanted to eat, she realized that the flying artifact and the people were gone. She asked curiously, "Where did they go?" Yu Qianzhou took the two pheasants and came to a small stream. He removed their feathers and gutted them. As he washed them, he told Ziyi, "I'll dismiss them first. I'll gather them again when I need them. Otherwise, I would have to pay a large sum of money to them every day. I can't take it." After all, Ziyi had been out for a long time. Her way of thinking was more or less enlightened. She wasn't as easy to guess as she used to be. After looking around, she said doubtfully, "I wasn't far from here just now. Why didn't I notice anything when so many people left?" "They have their own stealth methods. Ordinary people can't discover them," Yu Qianzhou said perfunctorily. This explanation was a little far-fetched. With Ziyi's cultivation, it was impossible for her not to notice such a huge commotion. Ziyi's pretty face turned cold. She asked unhappily, "Yu Qianzhou, are you hiding many things from me? What can I hide from you? What benefits do I get from hiding them from you?" Yu Qianzhou said without revealing any flaws. He carried the two bare-chested pheasants and walked to the pile of firewood that he had prepared. With a point of his finger he started a fire. He took out a few metal skewers and stabbed the pheasants over the fire to roast them. He then took out a bunch of seasonings and started serving them slowly. Ziyi pouted her lips and stood far away. Yu Qianzhou sat on top of a rock, concentrating on taking care of the two chickens. He brought out his barbecue skills to the extreme. After waiting for a while, a rich aroma of meat filled the air. Ziyi's nose flared. She couldn't help but occasionally look over. Yu Qianzhou smiled and did not say anything. He waited until the two pheasants were golden yellow in color, and most of the fat was gone. The fragrance lingered and did not dissipate. Then he put out the fire. He raised the two roasted pheasants in his hands and smiled. "Ziyi, come and have a taste. My cooking skills are top-notch. I guarantee that you will never forget it after you eat it." Ziyi wanted to remain silent to express her protest. However, to her dismay, she discovered that the saliva in her mouth increased. After she swallowed it with difficulty, she walked over casually. She did not even look at him. It seemed like she was not interested in the roasted pheasants. "You little gluttonous cat, playing this game with me?" The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth curled up into a smile. He stuck one into the ground beside him and took a bite of the other roasted pheasant. After chewing a few times, he mumbled, "Delicious, delicious." Ziyi turned her head and saw him tear off a layer of yellow and glossy pastry and put it into his mouth. Then he smacked his lips and revealed an intoxicated expression. Ziyi immediately walked over without saying anything. She grabbed the metal skewer and pulled out the other pheasant. Then she sat back to back with Yu Qianzhou and opened her mouth to take a bite. Yu Qianzhou finished eating first. He stood up and threw away the food in his hands. Water flowed between his hands and removed the oil stains. Ziyi placed her hands behind her back and turned to look at the little gluttonous cat. She ignored her ladylike demeanor and hugged the pheasant with her hands. After Ziyi finished eating with satisfaction, Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "Give me your hands." Ziyi stretched out her 2 hands in astonishment. When she saw the oil stains on her hands, she immediately stuck out her little red tongue. Suddenly, a wriggling little water dragon swam over and filled her 10 slender fingers, helping her get rid of the oil stains. The feeling of being touched by water was really comfortable. She looked at Yu Qianzhou with delight. However, she heard Yu Qianzhou smile and say, "Pucker up your mouth." Ziyi obediently did as she was told. Once again, she saw a little water dragon come over to help her clean the oil stains on her mouth and face. After the cleanliness, Ziyi widened her eyes and said, "It's delicious. You can roast it for me in the future." Yu Qianzhou nodded and smiled. "All right. However, let's make a trip to the Wu clan first." The barrier between them disappeared, and the 2 of them quickly flew towards the Wu clan. This time Yu Qianzhou visited the Wu clan secretly. He didn't openly pass through the crowded Hat Island. Instead, he alerted a guard at the periphery of the Wu clan and instructed him to inform Wu Sihai to make a trip over. When Wu Sihai received the news, he was rather astonished. He didn't know why Jianghu was acting so mysteriously. However, Jianghu reckoned that Jianghu didn't want too many people to know of his arrival. Jianghu cooperated and didn't alert anyone else. He only brought the other 3 clan heads over. The few of them met in a deep mountain forest outside of the Wu clan. The 4 clan heads wanted to see that group of rogue cultivators who were famous in the cultivation world, but they only saw 2 of them. They were a little regretful, but they didn't say anything. After exchanging conventional greetings, Yu Qianzhou smiled indifferently and said, "I didn't come here for anything else. I just want to tell everyone that I will be making a trip back to the demon region. Previously, because I killed Wu Jinggang, I promised to bring Senior Wu Bao to meet my master. I hope the Wu clan can make arrangements now and ask Senior Wu Bao if he has the time to go with me." Ziyi was slightly startled. She only found out about Yu Qianzhou's plan now. When she thought about meeting Senior Bai again, she was nervous and excited. The 4 clan heads looked at each other and were rather excited. After Wu Sihai's excitement, he got a little worried and couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianzhou, I wonder if Consecrator Wu Bao will be in danger after meeting the old ancestor. I am worried that the old ancestor—" He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone knew what he was worried about. It was obvious that he was afraid of infuriating the old ancestor, and Wu Bao might lose his life. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said, "It is useless for you to worry. You can't make the decision for this matter. Why don't you invite the Wu clan's 3 clan elders together and let them discuss it?" Wu Sihai nodded with a grave expression and said, "Wait for a moment, I will go invite the 3 clan elders immediately." After speaking, he quickly skimmed the sky and left. Chapter 436. When Wu Sihai returned, Wu Bao and the other 2 clan elders were nowhere to be seen. Wu Sihai's answer was that the 3 clan elders might have gone out, so they might not be able to visit the ancestor in the demon domain for the time being. The Bai, Jing, and Tan clan heads looked at each other thoughtfully, but didn't say anything. How could the 3 clan elders just disappear like that? It was more likely that they were afraid of meeting Bai Changchun. This was equivalent to indirectly telling Wu Lixue that they couldn't go. Yu Qianzhou smiled coldly, "You're a supervillain. I'm really worried about letting you stay by Wu Lixue's side. I wanted to bring you to the demon domain and kill you, but you didn't want to go. You're smart enough to escape this disaster." Wu Sihai also shook his head awkwardly. No matter how tactful his words were, it was useless. They were not fools, so they naturally understood the twists and turns. He did see Wu Bao just now. When he heard that they were going to visit the ancestor, his expression changed again and again. Wu Bao gritted his teeth and agreed to come, but was stopped by Wu Zhen at the crucial moment. Wu Zhen only said one sentence. Wu Bao, I'm afraid you'll be in danger this time. After all, our surname is not Bai. Listen to me, let's end this matter here. The atmosphere between them was a little strange. Wu Sihai changed the topic. Yu Qianqiu, aren't you going to see Shui Air? The matter between Wu Lixue and Yu Qianqiu was no longer a secret among the upper echelons of the four clans, so he asked without hesitation. Among the people present, only Ziyi didn't understand what he meant. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly. I have my own way of contacting Shui Air. Saying so, he took out a porcelain bottle and a jade archive from his storage pouch and handed them to Wu Sihai, saying, Senior Wu, please send these two things to Baihua Ferry of Baihua Palace as soon as possible. He then took out a jade archive saying, there are some things recorded in here. There's no risk, please do as I say, Senior Wu. I'll do my best. Wu Sihai received the items and exchanged glances with the other three clan heads. He felt that Yu Qianqiu was acting a little strange today, as if he had purposely come here to put an end to everything. For patriarchs, we shall meet again. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands at the four of them. A flying sword flew out from his sleeve and carried him away. A purple shadow followed behind him. The forest was quiet except for the occasional chirping of birds. The four of them looked at each other. High up in the sky, the two of them pierced through the clouds and mist. After Yu Qianqiu's cultivation increased, his flying speed increased significantly. Ziyi tilted her head and kept looking at him. The crease between her brows showed that she was thinking about something. Ever since she got together with Yu Qianqiu, she found that she couldn't figure out any of Yu Qianqiu's behaviors. It was beyond her understanding. So she began to learn to think slowly so that she wouldn't always feel confused. But it was really hard to figure it out. The more he thought about it, the more confused he felt. The thing you gave to the Wu family's patriarch just now. What did you ask him to do for you? Ziyi sadly realized that she might really be a little stupid. She couldn't figure it out, so she could only ask. Just a small matter. Yu Qianqiu answered perfunctorily. In his impression, this woman was a simple-minded person. Talking to her was just nonsense. She just needed to order her when she needed something. Liar. Ziyi protested strongly. Her pretty face turned cold again. Yu Qianqiu chuckled, turned his head and said, Don't think about this first. Better think about what my master will ask you after you see him. Ziyi suddenly panicked. She asked carefully, What will Senior Bai ask me? If he asks me what I've done, how am I supposed to answer him? Let me think. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. After you came out, you seemed to eat more. You didn't do anything else? No. Ziyi yelled and interrupted, You can't say that I ate. But I can't lie to my master. Yu Qianqiu frowned. Ziyi was stunned. She really couldn't lie to Senior Bai, whom she admired the most. Thinking about it carefully, he sadly realized that he seemed to eat more often. It seemed that as long as he was free, he would rarely stop eating. Then what should I do? Senior Bai asked me to help you with something, but I only cared about eating. If Senior Bai finds out about this, how will he look at me? Ziyi grabbed her hair and looked around blankly. She felt like she was about to collapse. She seemed to regret not being able to control her mouth. Will he kill me in anger? No. Ziyi said. Suddenly she yelled again, scaring Yu Qianqiu. She stared at Yu Qianqiu fiercely and said, You have to think of a way for me. Otherwise, don't think about returning to Obedient Island. Even if you want to go, you have to settle Senior Bai's matter first. Otherwise, no one can go back. You actually dare to threaten me? Believe it or not, I can strip you naked and set up a formation on the spot. Yu Qianqiu was startled. In the end, he sighed and said, Forget it. Whatever my master asks you, just say that you don't know and push the blame onto me. When the time comes, my master will naturally ask me and not you. That's for the best. Ziyi's eyes lit up. Her face brightened up. But then she found Yu Qianqiu looking at her with a strange expression. Ziyi suddenly realized that what she was doing was a little too selfish. She asked nervously, Can you bear it alone? Yu Qianqiu immediately asked, How about I let you bear it? No. Ziyi waved her hand and said, You bear it. You are Senior Bai's disciple. He won't do anything to you. If he really wants to punish you, as long as I am fine, I will ask my master to plead for you. Don't worry. Damn it. Like father, like daughter. You are just like your father at the crucial moment. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. The demon ghost region was filled with dense fog. All kinds of mournful cries could be heard from time to time. Not long after the two of them entered, some small demons and ghosts peeked at them. When they saw Yu Qianzhou's face, they quickly closed their drooling mouths and buried their heads in fear. The person who came was not someone they could covet. Shantian Island. In the big house at the center of the island, there was a mat on the floor. It was wiped clean by someone. Bai Changchun was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. He was quiet and peaceful. Beside him, there was another person lying on his side. He was supporting his head with one hand and spinning a teacup with the other. Who else dared to be so unscrupulous around Bai Changchun? It was Mr. Nongzhu, the owner of the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea. The lid of the teacup buzzed and stopped. Two slender and fair fingers flicked on the surface of the teacup. Nongzhu raised her head out of boredom and asked, Bai Changchun, are you really sure that Yu Qianzhou can protect my daughter? Bai Changchun refused to answer this question, which had been asked hundreds of times. Ever since he returned from the South Sea, Nongzhu had been eagerly coming over and staying on Obedient Island ever since. He would ask the same question a few times a day, but he had never been seen seriously cultivating. Even Bai Changchun wondered how this guy had reached the middle stage of deification. Seeing that he did not answer, Nongzhu sat up and took out the flute from his waist. He asked, Bai Changchun, don't you feel bored sitting here all day? Do you want me to play a song for you? Bai Changchun abruptly opened his eyes and stared at the face that was right in front of him. He said in a low voice, if you continue to chatter like a woman, I don't mind crippling you for a few hundred years and sending you back to the soul formation initial stage. Nongzhu quickly retracted his head. Bai Changchun snorted and closed his eyes again. After a while he opened his eyes again and frowned. Why are they here? Their cultivation has improved again. Nongzhu jumped up and said excitedly, who is so stupid to break into your territory? He was bored to death after staying here for so long. Today he could finally see what was going on. Your baby daughter. Bai Changchun finally replied. What? You mean Zi is back? When will she arrive? Nongzhu's handsome face twisted with excitement. He immediately released his divine sense and spread it around the demon ghost region. However, his cultivation was much lower than Bai Changchun's. He tried his best but still could not find Zi. But he was sure that it would take some time for his daughter to arrive if he could not find Zi with his divine sense. Yu Qianzhou and Zi crossed the 1,000 Miles Lake and landed on the island. Miss Mu also found them and was waiting for them on the island. Yu Qianzhou directly asked, is my master here? Lady Mu nodded slightly and looked enviously at the two of them leaving together. As soon as they entered the big house, they saw two masters sitting cross-legged on one side. At this time, Nongzhu had already concealed her sparse image and completely looked like a master. Yu Qianzhou and Zi were stunned at the same time. They did not expect Nongzhu to be here. They quickly saluted. Master, I'm back. Greetings, Senior Nongzhu. Greetings, Senior Bai. Greetings, Master. Bai Changchun nodded slightly and pointed to the front, indicating them to sit down. Nongzhu looked Zi up and down carefully. Her daughter should not have suffered any loss. Her face was slightly plump and she looked much better than before. Not bad, not bad. Nongzhu felt relieved. She looked at Yu Qianzhou again and felt that he was more pleasing to the eye. He should not mistreat his daughter outside. What's the matter? Bai Changchun asked. I miss you, Master. Yu Qianzhou said respectfully. Suddenly he found Nongzhu rolled her eyes disdainfully. He quickly added, secondly, I have something to report to Master. I have some plans and I want to ask for Master's permission first. On the other hand, Zi was trembling with fear. She was afraid that Bai Changchun would ask her some questions. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun discontentedly. The atmosphere was so serious that my daughter was scared like this. Chapter 437. You don't need to ask for my opinion and I won't interfere with you. I don't care what you do as long as you achieve what I want in the end. Bai Changchun said, looking at his little disciple who was sitting obediently in front of him. Based on his experience of more than 2,000 years, Yu Qianzhou was just a little disciple. Hearing his words, Yu Qianzhou didn't feel anything, but Zi was greatly relieved. It was good that Elder Bai didn't ask about it. I know. But, Master, I still have to tell you what I think or I won't be confident. Yu Qianzhou said. He thought to himself, the place I want to go has to be backed by this old guy. Before Bai Changchun answered, Nongzhu nodded repeatedly and said, say it, tell us all your ideas and let your master and I see if there is anything wrong. He was eager to know Yu Qianzhou's ideas. He had heard about this guy's bad reputation, and he didn't know what was in his head. Usually he couldn't ask him even if he wanted to. It couldn't be better to hear him say it on his own initiative. After all, his daughter was always by his side and he couldn't be careless. In front of his master, Nongzhu didn't have the right to make decisions, and Bai Changchun didn't object. Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and said, "Master, to be honest, before I became your disciple, I didn't have a good reputation in the cultivation world of Huaxia, and I had a lot of enemies. This time, it was difficult for me to move forward in the cultivation world of Huaxia. I wanted to do my bit for the cultivation world of Huaxia, but I was always plotted against by various sects, and I couldn't do what you asked me to do. I'm really ashamed." Before he finished speaking, he saw Nongzhu laughing happily. She looked at Yu Qianzhou with her eyes as if saying, "So, you also know that you have a bad reputation." Bai Changchun slightly raised his eyebrows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "They plotted against you and you didn't have any tricks? If you have suffered a loss and deliberately came to me to complain, then don't say any more. I can't afford to lose my face." The meaning of his words was clearly saying, if someone hit you, don't you know to hit back? The smile on Nongzhu's face froze. The master was so strong that even the way he taught his apprentice was so strong. It was obvious that whoever bullied you, you should bully them back. Bai Changchun was indeed worthy of his name. Startled for a moment, he immediately said to his daughter, "Ziyi, Elder Bai's words are priceless advice, you must remember them well." Actually, even without his instruction, Ziyi had already regarded Bai Changchun's every word and action as a rule. She nodded repeatedly and said, "I will remember." Yu Qianzhou respectfully said, "What teacher said makes sense. After disciple joined the Cultivation Alliance, I did the same thing. That's why I had a conflict with the Dalu sect, which is ranked second among the righteous sections. In the end, the disciple lost more than 200 subordinates while the Daluo sect lost more than 1,000 people. No one gained any advantage in the conflict. Instead, the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance was weakened and the foreign cultivators gained the upper hand." Wait. Nongzhu stopped him. She looked at Ziyi up and down again and said, "So many people died and the matter became so big? There are many cultivators in the Daluo sect at the final stage of the nature's test. Ziyi, are you okay? Damn it. It's not too late for you to say it after I'm done." Yu Qianzhou glanced at Nongzhu unhappily. It was not a good feeling to be interrupted in the middle of a conversation. "I'm fine." Ziyi replied, "Master, you don't know. The Daluo sect is so hateful. As soon as Yu Qianzhou and I arrived in the Huaxia cultivation world, the head of the Daluo sect came looking for trouble and fought with Yu Qianzhou. But he didn't know who taught Yu Qianzhou. In the end he lost an arm and came back with hatred. He deserved it. This guy killed his son. Of course he wants revenge." Nongzhu paused and said suspiciously, "The head of the Daluo sect is called Luo Qingtan. He seems to be at the middle stage of the nature's test. Ziyi, are you sure this guy defeated Luo Qingtian?" As far as she knew, although Yu Qianzhou's cultivation improved very quickly, he was still at the nascent soul stage. Bai Changchun didn't care. Healy was also at the middle stage of the nature's test, but he was still killed by Yu Qianzhou. But he didn't know that Healy had a high status in the demon ghost region. Usually no one dared to provoke him. He didn't have much combat experience and was not at the same level as Luo Qingtian. Nongzhu often wandered around in the outside world. Naturally, she knew this better than Bai Changchun. "Master, yes, it's that guy called Luo Qingtian. After he was defeated, he said that the grudge between the Daluo sect and Yu Qianzhou was written off. But after that he still allowed his disciples to provoke us. Not long ago, in Wanghai town, 4 Daluo sect cultivators at the late stage of the nature's test led more than 1,000 disciples to fight with us. In the end, more than 1,000 disciples were almost killed by Yu Qianzhou's subordinates," Ziyi said with a smile. This was the nature of women. After finding someone to talk to, it was hard to stop talking. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun, who was calm. She turned around and asked, "Yu Qianzhou, where did you get so many subordinates? Did you bring people from the demon ghost region?" Yu Qianzhou just wanted to make up an excuse, but Ziyi said first, "We didn't bring them out of the demon ghost region. We spent money to hire thugs. We have been making money outside and then we spent money to hire thugs to help us." Why did she mention the matter of making money? Yu Qianzhou sweated profusely. He was almost stunned. Before coming here, he deliberately mentioned Bai Changchun to scare this one-track mind. He was afraid that she would talk nonsense. Who knew that once she started talking, even if he put a knife on her neck, she couldn't stop talking? It seemed that he had underestimated this woman's mouth. Spend money to hire thugs? Such a hooligan way of doing things? Well, that sounds like your style. Nongzhu laughed. If Ziyi didn't need to do anything, she wouldn't be in danger. He agreed with this approach. But then he thought it was not right, so he asked suspiciously again, Ziyi, you just said that there were 4 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity. Did you spend money to hire them to be your thugs? Although the cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity were nothing in his eyes, he knew that they were already the top masters in the so-called cultivation world. They couldn't be hired with money. No, the strongest of the thugs we hired was only at the early stage of the passing calamity. As for the 4 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity, Xianxia and I fought 2 each. Speaking of this, Ziyi looked at Nongzhu embarrassedly and said, I'm ashamed. I fought 2 at the same time, but I couldn't win. On the other hand, Xianxia beat the 2 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity so hard that they couldn't fight back. If it weren't for the masters coming to stop him, I'm afraid that Xianxia would have killed them. Hearing this, not to mention Nongzhu, even Bai Changchun looked at Xianxia in surprise. Nongzhu was stunned and said, Girl, are you talking in your sleep? She turned to look at Xianxia and said, Tell me what happened? Oh, they went too far and I couldn't help but get angry, so I went all out. Xianxia replied weakly, but I didn't expect that the cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity would be so weak. I was lucky to win. Speaking of such a glorious deed, he was indeed proud of himself. But in front of these 2 masters, it was better to be humble. Bai Changchun frowned slightly and slowly closed his eyes. Nongzhu couldn't stop laughing and said, Lucky, you used lucky really well. When your master was only at the early stage of the transforming spirit realm, he dared to challenge the masters at the last stage of the transforming spirit realm. Tut-tut. Like master, like disciple. I've seen it today. There's no justice in this world. Elder Bai's disciple is naturally not an ordinary person. Ziyi peeped at Bai Changchun and flattered him. Bai Changchun frowned slightly again. No one knew what he was feeling at this time. Nongzhu was stunned. She had raised this daughter for so many years, but she had never flattered her. She didn't expect that she would flatter someone else in front of her for the first time. This was unbearable. Nongzhu's jealousy was suddenly overturned. She stared at Xianxia and said with jealousy in her mouth, Your master has a lot of contact with the old monster in the southern Ming Empire. Your master must have given you some spirit treasure. Show me what you used to defeat the 2 guys at the last stage of the Crossing Heavens test. That. Xianxia lamented in his heart. Ziyi was so talkative that she finally talked about something she shouldn't talk about. The black fire flying sword was made of the ghost fire of the netherworld. It could fool ordinary people, but it was very difficult to fool the 2 guys in front of him. Especially Bai Changchun. He had seen the message left by the old guy in the 9th netherworld cave. What this and that? Are you afraid that I will rob your treasure? Show me. Nongzhu said very unhappily. She thought to herself, My daughter has flattered your master for the first time. I just want to see your treasure. Why are you complaining? When Xianxia was still hesitating, Nongzhu directly took action. Before Xianxia could react, he felt something around his waist. He looked down and found that the storage bag was gone. On the other hand, there was a storage bag in Nongzhu's hand. She was shaking it in confusion. It's over. It's exposed. Xianxia suddenly became silent. Brat, are you kidding me? Nongzhu held the storage bag and asked, Is it fun to hang an empty bag on your waist? I knew that you are not a good guy, but I didn't expect you to be so cautious. You actually hung an empty bag to fool people. Master, is there nothing in it? Ziyi asked curiously. She saw Xianxia put things in it every time. Just as she finished asking, her master threw the storage bag to her hand and let her see for herself. Ziyi used her divine sense to check it. It was empty. There was nothing in it. It was very clean. This should be the storage pouch. I know it. Ziyi tilted her head and asked, Xianxia, where are the things inside? Where did you hide them? Chapter 438. I'll hide it in your grandma's house. Why are you joining in the fun? Xianxia was really speechless. His storage bag was just for show. Everything was taken and placed in Utopia through this bag. Who would go through his storage bag normally? It was only because of Nongzhu, who was so unreasonable that she took it without being asked. He had to take revenge. Xianxia made up his mind and said with a look of sudden realization, Senior Nongzhu, I almost forgot something. Someone asked me to ask you a question. Nongzhu chuckled. Trying to change the topic? Among the people you know, who else knows me? Old thing. Don't regret it. Yu Qianzhou was overjoyed, but he put on a serious face and said, someone told me to ask you if you know someone called Xiaoyao. Nongzhu's teasing smile froze on her face. She probably wouldn't be able to recover in a while. Bai Changchun opened his eyes and glanced at the father and daughter with a strange expression. Then he closed his eyes again as if he didn't hear anything. After a long time, Nongzhu looked at Ziyi, who was staring at her with a guilty conscience. She coughed and said, Yu Qianzhou, who told you to ask me? It's Fairy Xianghua, the leader of the Moon Clan, which is ranked third in the wuxia cultivation world. She asked me to ask you. Do you know her? Yu Qianzhou said seriously. However, the smugness in his eyes was caught by Nongzhu. Nongzhu's face darkened. She asked Ziyi, have you seen the leader too? Yes, that woman is very annoying. But she's quite generous and gave us a lot of spirit stones. Ziyi smiled. Since she gave you spirit stones, how can you talk bad about her behind her back? Nongzhu reprimanded. However, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was clear that Yu Qianzhou knew something, but Ziyi was still in the dark. Ziyi stuck out her red tongue and quickly shut up. Master rarely reprimanded her like this. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianzhou coldly and said in a low voice, I don't know any Xiaoyao. Don't ask me such questions in the future. I hate it when people ask me boring questions. If there's a next time, I'll break your legs. At that time, even your master won't be able to protect you. The warning in his words was very strong. Yu Qianzhou nodded in agreement. After what he had done, the other party would probably back off and not make things difficult for him anymore. However, Yu Qianzhou's plan was wrong. Nongzhu was apparently not afraid of his threat. She said indifferently, cut the crap. Take out your treasure. If you continue to hide it, I will strip you naked and search for it. It seemed that she wanted to catch Yu Qianzhou and take revenge on him. Yu Qianzhou's face twitched. He thought to himself, fine, you are so cruel. When I bring Xianghua Fairy to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, I will definitely let you reunite with your wife and have fun. To be honest, Senior Nongzhu, I really don't have any treasure. The so-called treasure is just a way to condense fire under the guidance of my master. It can fool others, but it's not elegant in front of you. Yu Qianzhou said with a bitter smile. Condense fire? What kind of magic art is that? I've never seen your master use it. Come on, show it to me and see if you can fool me. Nongzhu suddenly became interested. Ziyi had been with Yu Qianzhou for a long time, but it was the first time she heard this. Her face turned cold. She gave Yu Qianzhou 2 words in her heart. Liar. How dare I show off in front of you? You don't have to, right? Cut the crap. Hurry up. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head. Under the gaze of the father and daughter, he stretched out his palm. In the room, a green shadow was shining. A green fire was ignited in Yu Qianzhou's palm, and it started to spin rapidly. As the fire gradually grew smaller, the misty green light in the room disappeared, and a green flying sword floated above his palm. Bai Changchun didn't care about it at all. He knew when Yu Qianzhou practiced this magic art. Ziyi was stunned. It turned out that Yu Qianzhou's flying sword was condensed by fire. No wonder his sleeve was like a storage bag, and he could summon a flying sword just by waving his hand. Interesting. Nongzhu raised her hand and took the green flying sword into her hand. She flicked the sword with her slender fingers, and the sound of metal clanking could be heard. She couldn't help but exclaim, thousands of magic arts, endless and endless. It's really magical, really magical. Ziyi tilted her head and looked at it for a while. Suddenly she frowned and said, Yu Qianzhou, you didn't use a green flying sword to defeat the 2 cultivators at the end of the nature test stage. What I saw was clearly a black flying sword. Could it be condensed from black flames? She didn't know what the green fire and black fire meant. She just thought that the green fire could condense into a green flying sword, and the black flying sword must be condensed by black fire. Black fire? Nongzhu was shocked and stared at Yu Qianzhou in disbelief. Even Bai Changchun opened his eyes instantly. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, piercing Yu Qianzhou's body. Damn it. Ziyi, you bitch, you win. Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered and he felt extremely guilty. He didn't know what would happen if he hid this from Bai Changchun, so he quickly thought about how to deal with it. You can hide the black fire in your body? Bai Changchun asked word by word. Nongzhu looked at him in surprise and asked, Old Bai, don't you know? According to his deduction, if Yu Qianzhou could subdue the black fire as his disciple, then Bai Changchun as his master could naturally do it too. If so, didn't Bai Changchun have the ability to cross the sea of netherworld fire and open the gate to the underworld with his flesh and blood? But it seemed that even he didn't know about his disciple. Ziyi looked at the two masters' faces. She didn't expect that her words could make them react so strongly. After thinking for a while, she was also surprised. She remembered that her master had told her about the three true fire. If Xianxia really had the black fire, wouldn't it be the legendary black fire that ranked second in the three true fire? Thinking about it, she was also shocked. It was the legendary netherworld ghost fire that guarded the gate to the underworld. It was the barrier that separated the human world and the underworld. How could Xianxia have the black fire? Yes, master. Xianxia stammered, but he had a countermeasure in his heart. He was relieved. Nongzhu knocked on the cyan flying sword in her hand and said in surprise, "You mean you can carry the netherworld ghost fire like the cyan fire?" "I think so." Xianxia continued to be vague. "Xianxia, don't scare me." "What do you mean by I think so? Don't make fun of me and your master." "Yes means yes, no means no." Nongzhu asked with her eyes wide open. Bai Changchun also stared at his disciple with a burning gaze and said, "Release your black flame and let me see." "Since master has said so, this disciple will do as you say." Xianxia stood up and bowed to the two. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu stood up at the same time and slowly stepped back. They looked serious as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Seeing her daughter still sitting beside Xianxia, Nongzhu immediately shouted, "Ziyi, come to my back. You can't bear the power of the black fire." Ziyi frowned and thought, "Is it so terrible? I have seen it before and the black fire flying sword is not so powerful." Although she thought about it, she still stood up and hurried to her master's back. Bai Changchun nodded and said, "Let's start." Xianxia bowed again and started to use the fire incantation quietly. The three suddenly found that Xianxia's eyes suddenly became as dark as ink, and a strange black fire appeared in each of his eyes. Then they heard a light buzz. In the blink of an eye, Xianxia had been wrapped by a black fire. Although it was strange, it didn't make people feel that it was very powerful. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other with some doubts in their eyes. Ziyi looked at the two elders and then walked to Xianxia. She looked at the black fire curiously and asked, "Xianxia, is this the legendary netherworld ghost fire? I don't think it's that good." Nongzhu turned her head and said, "Old Bai, didn't you say that you had stayed in front of the netherworld fire? Let's see if it's true or not." "It looks like it, but it doesn't have the power of the netherworld ghost fire." Bai Changchun frowned. "That's strange." Nongzhu shouted to Xianxia, "Boy, you didn't make a fake thing to scare people, did you? This is my trump card at the critical moment, and it's the first time I show it to people. How dare you doubt the power of my trump card?" Xianxia rolled his eyes and said to Bai Changchun respectfully, "Master, I have restrained the power of the black fire. If you want to see it, I can release it at any time." "Good. Release it and see," Bai Changchun said without hesitation. Nongzhu shouted again, "Ziyi, come back." Ziyi didn't care about the two old guys' shock and thought, "There's nothing to be afraid of." She couldn't disobey her master, so she walked back slowly. Xianxia glanced at her and thought, "You talk too much. I'll teach you a lesson today." A ghastly and cold aura burst out from Xianxia's body in an instant. All kinds of extreme negative aura such as despair, desolation, loneliness, brutality and death, had filled the whole room in an instant, making people feel like they were falling into the sea of bitterness and unable to escape. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu's pupils suddenly shrank. Bai Changchun even shouted, "Yes, it's the netherworld ghost fire." At this time, Xianxia, wrapped in the black fire and all kinds of extreme aura, came to the human world like a messenger of the underworld. He wanted to trample on happiness and spread the glory of the god of death. Under Xianxia's deliberate obstruction, Ziyi in the hall shuddered again and again. She was originally walking toward her master, but she suddenly stopped. She was on the verge of collapsing, and her mind became absent-minded. His body and mind were immersed in endless sorrow. He thought about his parents whom he had never seen before. Why did his parents abandon him when he was born? If even his parents abandoned him, then what was the point of him living? It was better to die. Chapter 439. An endless stream of negative emotions silently descended upon Ziyi. Furthermore, she was completely defenseless. Even though Ziyi's cultivation was at the end of the tribulation passing stage, her mental state was on the verge of collapse. She even had the thought of suicide. For people like Bai Changchun and Nongzhu, their divine sense was as strong as steel and their psyche power was very strong. The negative emotions were not enough to affect them. However, the chill that went deep into their bones forced them to use their cultivation to resist it. Bai Changchun was fine. Firstly, his cultivation was very strong. Secondly, he had been to the Sea of Netherworld Fire, so he was not surprised. Nongzhu was shocked. It was not that she could not resist it, but for the first time she found that the Netherworld Ghost Fire was not hot. It was the other extreme of the fire that she knew. It was extremely cold, which could not be measured by the common sense of the human world. The two masters were looking at Yu Qianzhou. Suddenly they found that Ziyi was lying on the ground. Nongzhu exclaimed, "Ziyi, what happened to you?" She threw away the green flying sword in her hand. He teleported to Ziyi quickly and helped her up. While he was distracted, all kinds of extreme negative emotions quickly invaded his mind. Nongzhu was shocked and quickly dispelled the evil thoughts. "Put away the black fire," Bai Changchun shouted. Yu Qianzhou did not dare to hesitate. He quickly put away the black fire and the green flying sword that Nongzhu threw away. The gloomy atmosphere in the room quickly disappeared, and the low temperature dissipated. Nongzhu held Ziyi up and pointed two fingers. A dazzling silver light appeared on her fingertips, which illuminated the whole room. Then she pointed between Ziyi's eyebrows. The silver light was slowly injected into Ziyi's body. Ziyi's whole body was suddenly covered with a misty white light. Yu Qianzhou did not understand what it was, but Bai Changchun shook his head slightly. Nongzhu really loved her daughter. She injected 10 years of cultivation into her daughter's body without any hesitation. 10 years of cultivation of a cultivator in the middle stage of the divine transformation realm was equivalent to 100 years of cultivation of Ziyi. Ziyi slowly woke up and saw her master hugging her. She shivered and her teeth trembled as she said, "Master, disciple is so cold. Am I going to die?" "Nonsense. I will drive the cold away for you." Nongzhu's eyes turned red in an instant. With a muffled hum, her body suddenly emitted a dense white flame, wrapping Ziyi in her arms. Ziyi's tense body gradually relaxed, and her face began to regain color. She was so comfortable that she fell asleep. Bai Changchun frowned and shouted, "Nongzhu, that's enough. Ziyi is fine. You don't need to burn your cultivation to drive her away." Yu Qianzhou was wondering if this was the legendary human fire that could be released by someone with high cultivation. After hearing Bai Changchun's words, he was shocked. Nongzhu was actually burning her cultivation. Oh my! She was going to punish him later. Nongzhu turned a deaf ear to him and was still burning her cultivation to give her beloved daughter careful care. Bai Changchun flicked Nongzhu's back with a white light. The human fire on Nongzhu's body at the cost of her cultivation was immediately extinguished. Bai Changchun waved his palm and slapped in the air. A strong momentum rushed out and directly shook Nongzhu to one side. "Old Bai, what are you doing?" Nongzhu immediately got up and shouted. Bai Changchun ignored him. He raised his hand and formed 5 claws. Ziyi, who was lying on the ground, slowly floated up and moved towards Bai Changchun. Her head touched the 5 claws, and 5 wisps of golden qi entered Ziyi's head from the claws. Immediately, Ziyi let out a moan and opened her eyes. Nongzhu's face lit up and she ran over happily. Bai Changchun waved his palm faintly, and the purple robe spun as he gently stood on the ground. He looked around in confusion and asked, "What happened to me just now? Is she all right?" Nongzhu asked worriedly. Bai Changchun snorted coldly and said, "It's just an external evil invading the body. Just dispel it. Is there a need to make such a fuss?" "Ah, that's good, that's good." Nongzhu laughed and returned to normal in a blink of an eye, as if nothing had happened. However, the way he looked at Yu Qianzhou seemed to be harboring evil intentions. Bai Changchun waved his hand and pushed Nongzhu away. He stared at Yu Qianzhou and asked, "Have you been to the 9th Netherworld cave?" "I went there out of curiosity." Yu Qianzhou answered honestly. He almost made a big mistake just now. He did not expect the black fire to be so powerful. Ziyi, who was in the last phase of the heavens test, was so weak in front of the black fire. "With your cultivation, can you break into the 9th Netherworld cave?" Bai Changchun frowned. "Is it the 9th Netherworld cave?" "Senior Bai, I can prove that he did go in there. I went with him." Ziyi recovered and walked over to testify. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. "How come I don't remember going in there with you?" Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other. Nongzhu said seriously, "Ziyi, don't talk nonsense. With your cultivation, how can you enter the 9th Netherworld cave?" Ziyi hurriedly explained, "No, when I left the demon region with Yu Qianzhou last time we went there. I was outside and did not go in, but I saw him go in with my own eyes. He stayed there for a long time." Yu Qianzhou was happy. He was afraid that Bai Changchun would think that he deliberately did not report it. Now that Ziyi said it, it could be explained. It was not that he did not want to tell her, but he did not come back until now. That was why he did not tell her. He guessed right. Although Bai Changchun did not care whether he could have the black fire or not, he suspected that he deliberately did not say it. Now that Ziyi said it, he felt a little relieved. With your cultivation, can you enter the sea of netherworld fire? Bai Changchun asked. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. To tell you the truth, I was curious and wanted to see what the legendary 9th netherworld cave looked like. Who knew that it was so dangerous inside? After I went in, it was difficult to come out. But I accidentally found that the green fire on me could restrain the chilly wind and evil spirit in the cave, so I went in. Nongzhu clicked her tongue and exclaimed, You're really bold. You actually entered the 9th nether cave just because of a moment of curiosity? There was something in his heart that he didn't say out. Even I dare not go deep into the end. Even if you can go there with your cultivation, it is impossible to go through the eye of the wind. How did you go there? Bai Changchun asked coldly. He had high expectations for Yu Qianzhou, but he would not allow him to use his expectations to deceive him. If so, how could he entrust the position of the demon region torture envoy to him in the future? It was better to kill him on the spot, lest he entrusted it to the wrong person. Nongzhu was someone who knew Bai Changchun well. She immediately felt the killing intent in his words and could not help but be secretly shocked. She did not say a word. Yu Qianzhou acutely noticed this and his back broke out in cold sweat. His divine sense quickly locked onto Utopia. If he found anything wrong, he would escape immediately. However, he still scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. I'm afraid people will laugh at my method. I really can't go there, so I used a stupid method. I dug a tunnel under the eye of the wind and went in just like that. What? You dug a tunnel in the 9th netherworld cave? Nongzhu did not want to speak anymore, but she could not help but say something when she heard such a ridiculous thing. In fact, he had entered the 9th netherworld cave before, but he could not go through the eye of the wind. Bai Changchun was stunned as well and said, It's all solid netherworld metal inside, how can you dig a tunnel? Master might not know, but my green fire flying sword is quite sharp. It is not difficult to dig a tunnel in the netherworld metal. However, I did not expect to see masters. Yu Qianzhou chuckled and did not continue. Nongzhu asked curiously, What did you see about your master? Yu Qianzhou scratched his head and said with a tight-lipped look, Nothing much, just a few words. When he said that, Nongzhu was even more curious. She turned her head and said, Old Bai, what words did you leave inside? Bai Changchun could not be bothered with him and continued to ask, Since you have seen the words I left behind, with the profoundness of your fire technique, I believe the netherworld fire sea cannot stop you. Did you see what is behind the netherworld fire sea? Nongzhu's eyes lit up and stared at Yu Qianzhou. Until now, she had never heard of anyone being able to pass through the netherworld fire sea. She had never heard of the situation behind. Could this brat really be the first? I'm quite curious. When I got there, I could not help but go and have a look. I did go there, but I did not find anything interesting behind. Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and said, There is a huge netherworld metal mountain wall, on which there are many skulls of different sizes carved. There is also a huge door. Other than that, I did not see anything good. The netherworld gate. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu were shocked at the same time. The former slowly closed his eyes and sighed softly. He didn't expect that his disciple would stupidly barge into the place that he failed to enter. Ziyi looked at Yu Qianzhou eagerly and felt annoyed. He had been to such an interesting place, but he had never told me about it. What a liar. Nongzhu rubbed her hands excitedly and said, Yu Qianzhou, although I do not dare to say that you are the first person in history, you are definitely the only person in the cultivation world who has played in front of the netherworld gate. I Nongzhu admire you. Senior Nongzhu, what is so interesting about that place? It is full of ghosts. Yu Qianzhou looked disdainful and deliberately acted cool. But you. Nongzhu opened her mouth and was speechless. She realized that she had no common language with this lunatic. She waved her hand and said, Don't interrupt me. Tell me, what does the netherworld gate look like? Nothing much. The gate is very tall and big, and there are many expressions of happiness, anger, sadness, and happiness carved on it. Yu Qianzhou said as he slapped his forehead and said, That's right, there are also 2 Ouroboros which are quite mighty. I thought that the knocker was some kind of treasure, so I specially cut off the teeth of the Ouroboros and made a knocker to play with. Who knew that it was useless? Chapter 440. The corner of Bai Changchun's mouth twitched. Nongzhu's expression was even more interesting. It was no exaggeration to say that her expression was ever-changing. She gritted her teeth and asked, "Did you saw off the knocker of the gate to the underworld?" "I didn't get all of them, just one. Because the two animal teeth were too solid, it was troublesome." Yu Qianzhou scratched his head. Ziyi could imagine what the gate to the underworld was for no matter how inexperienced she was. This guy actually dared to. Ziyi looked at him dumbfounded. For the first time the word audacious appeared in her mind. Clap clap. Nongzhu's gaze lingered on the master and disciple. She shook her head and exclaimed, "Like master, like disciple. I admire you so much. You two are a perfect match." Then, as if she thought of something, she said to Yu Qianzhou, "Where's the thing? Is the knocker with you? Take it out and let me have a look." Yu Qianzhou touched his waist subconsciously. It was empty. Only then did he remember that his storage bag was snatched by Nongzhu. He glanced at the storage bag on the ground and couldn't help but curse Nongzhu's ancestors. He knew that Bai Changchun was already suspicious. Although it was better now, if he didn't take out some evidence to completely dispel his doubts, the consequences would be unpredictable. So, under the gazes of the others, Yu Qianzhou reached into his clothes and searched for a while. He weakly took out another storage bag and smiled awkwardly at them. Bai Changchun, Nongzhu and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. They looked at the storage bag on the ground with different expressions. They couldn't tell what it smelled like. "Old Bai, you have a good disciple," Nongzhu said to Bai Changchun as if she was praising him. Bai Changchun's eyebrows twitched. He was really speechless. "I have offended too many people in the cultivation world, so I had to hang this storage bag to confuse the enemies outside," Yu Qianzhou explained. "Actually, even this storage bag was taken from Utopia at the last minute." As he spoke, he reached into the storage bag and took out a pair of black tusks as long as chopsticks and as thick as a banana. He handed them to Nongzhu. When this pair of things was taken out, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped a lot. A faintly discernible gloomy aura gradually filled the room. The pupils of the other three slightly shrank. Yu Qianzhou also felt it himself. He was somewhat surprised. He didn't feel anything unusual in front of the gate of the underworld. How could it be like this now? He himself had forgotten one thing. The eerie aura in front of the underworld gate was already very dense. The aura emitted by the two fangs was really insignificant. How could he have sensed it at that time? Now that they were in the mortal world, it would be strange if something from the netherworld appeared here. Nongzhu held the two black sticks in her hands and felt that they were cold to the bone. They were indeed extraordinary. She knocked them against each other and the sound of dang dang was dull but heart-wrenching. Every time it rang, people would feel frightened. "Is this the tooth of the heaven-devouring beast on the gate to the netherworld?" Nongzhu asked. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou nodded in agreement, he turned it over and over again for a long time, but he could not tell what it was made of. Shaking his head, he passed it to Bai Changchun and said, "Old Bai, take a look at what this is. I have never seen it before." Bai Changchun took it and looked at it for a long time, but he was also silent. Obviously he couldn't tell it apart. "Where is the ring?" Nongzhu frowned and said, "I want to see the ring. Why did you give me two animal teeth?" *CK. Wouldn't it be more believable if he had teeth and rings? Yu Qianzhou reached into the storage bag again, but his vision blurred and the storage bag in his hand disappeared. Looking up, Nongzhu seemed to be crazily playing with the storage bag. Yu Qianzhou had a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, Nongzhu suddenly raised his head with his eyes wide open. Weighing the storage bag in his hand, he shouted without caring about his handsome image, "Yu Qianzhou, don't tell me that this is another thing you use to confuse the enemy." Bah! The storage bag was thrown aside. Bai Changchun and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. They rarely saw Nongzhu lose his composure like this. "Don't, I am more than 1,000 years old, I can't bear it." Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything. He reached into his robe and took out another storage pouch. He smiled awkwardly and said, "I have too many storage pouches for self-defense. I took the wrong one." He quickly took out a large black ring from the storage pouch. The temperature in the hall dropped again, and the gloomy atmosphere became stronger. It seemed that the inside and outside of the hall were two different worlds. Yu Qianzhou respectfully handed the ring to Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun took it and returned the two animal teeth to him. Holding the big ring, he squinted his eyes and looked at it carefully. When Yu Qianzhou was about to put the two animal teeth away, the storage bag in his hand disappeared again. He saw Nongzhu holding the storage bag and sneered, "Is it empty again?" Then he injected his divine sense into it to check. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He stared at Nongzhu's handsome face, which was gradually changing shape. The storage bag was thrown away again. Nongzhu slowly walked towards him with a twitching face and said, "I'll strip you naked and see how many storage bags you have." Ziyi looked at her master in surprise. She didn't expect her master to be so shameless. Not only did he rob Nongzhu several times, but he also wanted to strip Nongzhu naked. "Master, help me." Yu Qianzhou felt wronged and moved to Bai Changchun's side. Bai Changchun stared at Nongzhu coldly and scolded, "Have you had enough? Don't you act like a master?" Then he threw the big ring to Nongzhu. Nongzhu caught the big ring and was slightly stunned. Looking at Ziyi, he realized that it was inappropriate. Stripping a man naked in front of his daughter was not something a father should do. She was so angry that she became muddle-headed. How could she say such things in front of her daughter? In order to cover up her embarrassment, Nongzhu held the big ring and examined it seriously. After looking at it, she nodded and said, "This thing is obviously made of the same material as the two beast teeth. We can't tell, so it must be something rare. Maybe Nanming can recognize it. Why don't we show it to him?" After a pause, Nongzhu suddenly laughed out loud and said, "Old Bai, with this thing in hand, even if you can't harvest any of the flame-deficient profound fruits outside, and even if it's difficult to invite that old guy from Nanming, I guarantee that he will still come to you. That old guy can't resist the temptation of this rare material." Bai Changchun nodded slightly. He had already imagined what Nongzhu said. Nanming would come to him and beg him. He couldn't help but smile. But then he frowned and subconsciously looked at Yu Qianzhou. This thing was his disciples. As a master, how could he use his disciples' things without permission? Not to mention he had never given anything to Yu Qianzhou. Nongzhu knew Bai Changchun very well. Looking at his expression, she knew what he was worried about. This world's #1 master had his own pride. He would rather break than bend. He would never ask his disciple for something. It seemed that it was time for him to be the bad guy again. Nongzhu coughed and said to Yu Qianzhou indifferently, "Yu Qianzhou, what do you need these two beast teeth in the door knocker for? If not, you can give them to your master. Your master has great use for them." Since the words were so clear, how could Yu Qianzhou not know what she meant? He immediately offered the two beast teeth and said, "Master, if you need them, you can take them. Anyway, they are useless in my hands. If they are not enough, you can tell me. At worst, I will tear down the gate of the underworld." Tear down the gate of the underworld? Nongzhu was shocked and said, "Yu Qianzhou, don't mess around. That gate is very important. It is the thing that separates the yin and yang. You can't touch it. The two beast teeth and the door knocker are enough." He had heard a lot about Yu Qianzhou, and he knew that there was nothing this guy didn't dare to do in the cultivation world. But how could the cultivation world be compared with the underworld? The underworld was as famous as the immortal world. If he really tore down the gate of the underworld, oh my, God knows what would happen. Ziyi was shocked by Yu Qianzhou's words again. She stuck out her bright red tongue. She really admired Yu Qianzhou from the bottom of her heart. He wanted to tear down the gate of the underworld. "Master, is it really enough? If not, I can leave the ghost gate alone for the time being. But I can get you another door knocker." Yu Qianzhou patted his chest and promised. "Do you really think it belongs to you?" Nongzhu was speechless. Bai Changchun stared at Yu Qianzhou with his deep eyes, as if he could see through people's thoughts, which made Yu Qianzhou feel guilty. After a while, Bai Changchun silently put the two ferocious broken teeth and the big ring into the storage bag, and said to Yu Qianzhou, "Follow me to the 9th netherworld cave." "Why would I go to the 9th netherworld cave?" I just said it casually. Does the old guy really want me to tear down the gate of the underworld? No way. Yu Qianzhou was shocked, but he forced himself to calm down and saluted, "I." Before he could finish the word yes, he felt his arm was tightened. His vision blurred and the wind suddenly rushed in his ears. When he opened his eyes again, he was already above the sparkling 1,000-mile lake, flying at a speed that he had never experienced before. His arm was grabbed by Bai Changchun. Suddenly, someone shouted from behind, "Old Bai, wait for me. Don't fly so fast." Yu Qianzhou looked back and saw that the Shantian island had become a sesame dot. Nongzhu had already followed them from afar and was gradually approaching. Ziyi, who was on the Shantian island, saw that the three people in front of her had suddenly disappeared. She was stunned for a moment, but then she thought of the conversation between them and immediately understood what was going on. She immediately shouted, "Master, take me to see them." But when she teleported to the sky outside the house, she could no longer see the shadows of the three people. She circled around in the sky for a few times and then came back in a huff. When Nongzhu caught up with them, the three people had just passed through the beautiful 1,000-mile lake, turned into shadows and flew into the endless clouds and fog. Xianxia looked around him and he was so shocked that he was speechless. The #1 expert in the world was indeed extraordinary. How long had it been? In less than an hour they had already left the 1,000-mile lake. Chapter 441. Nongzhu was also shocked. Although she knew that Bai Changchun's cultivation was strong, it was hard for her to catch up with him while flying. The gap between them was hard to measure. And it seemed that he didn't try his best. What he showed was just average. "Old Bai, why are you in a hurry to go to the 9th Abyss Cave?" Nongzhu asked. Bai Changchun looked ahead and didn't answer her. He sighed in his heart. If he didn't want Xianxia to take over the demon realm, he wouldn't have to do this. The demon realm had been passed down from generation to generation. The torture envoy of each generation couldn't be easily appointed. They had to be carefully selected without any negligence. Once the wrong person was appointed, the whole world would be in chaos, and the painstaking efforts of the previous torture envoys would be wasted. If Xianxia was just his disciple, it wouldn't be a big deal. But this guy had great potential and Bai Changchun liked him at first sight. However, he could also tell that this fellow was not someone who would settle down. His actions were sneaky and he flattered without hesitation. He was not stingy with his flattery and he did not know what shame was. But these were not the most important things for Bai Changchun. A disciple who didn't have the ability to adapt would be embarrassed. That was why he asked Xianxia to help the wuxia cultivation world. The purpose was to train him. In fact, people like Bai Changchun who had reached the level of cultivation, cared about all the people in the world. Why would they care about the cultivation world of China? In his eyes, the cultivation world had long lost the distinction of nationality. The cultivation world was the cultivation world. Cultivators from different countries were all part of the cultivation world. The soul formation realm cultivators from different countries were just like chickens and dogs in Bai Changchun's eyes. He could kill them in an instant. No one in the world could stop him. But he understood the way of heaven and understood balance was the truth. Since he understood this way, he had to keep it. Bai Changchun didn't have much time. Since he chose Xianxia to take over as the torture envoy of the demon realm, he had to make the best use of time to train this guy. The soul formation experts of each country could be used as a whetstone to sharpen the blunt knife that was Xianxia. Once the blunt knife revealed its cold edge and became invincible when it wielded the knife to sweep the world, it would be time to hide its edge in the demon ghost region. In this way, the demon realm would still be a forbidden area in the world. No one dared to violate it because one of them could intimidate the world. As long as the torture envoy was there, the demon realm would not be chaotic. The cultivation world would not be in chaos if the demon ghost territory was not in chaos, and the world would not be in chaos if the cultivation world was not in chaos. This was the responsibility of the torture envoy of the demon ghost territory. However, no matter how high Bai Changchun's cultivation was, the human heart was fickle and he couldn't see through it. If his disciple even lied his master, how could he entrust him with such an important task? The Ji Changchun's heart. For example, Bai Changchun himself. Few people in the cultivation world who knew him would say that he was a good person. His high cultivation, unreasonable and indiscriminate killing of innocent people were his trademark. Therefore he would not use the standards of a good person to judge Xianxia. However, he valued the quality of his character. Therefore, no matter how perfect Xianxia's story was, Bai Changchun still had to go to the 9th nether cave to see for himself. If it was not true, Nongzhu would have to prepare to take over the demon realm. The lingering sound of the three people flying in the sky made the people in the demon realm tremble and hide quietly. Coming from the direction of the 1,000-mile lake, who else could have such a cultivation except for the emotionless torturing envoy? The place where the three people flew over was so quiet that no sound could be heard. Xianxia already knew what Bai Changchun was going to do. Fortunately, he was very honest and told everything. There was nothing to be afraid of. After half a day, the three people arrived at the sky above the territory of Yuji. Outside the Ghost King Hall, the area within a radius of several dozen miles was covered by a huge formation. Dark clouds billowed, and looking down from above, it was even more eerie and frightening than the surrounding areas, making it impossible to see what was below. Bai Changchun didn't slow down at all when the three people arrived. He raised his hand and waved, pointing at the dense clouds and fog below. An incomparably powerful momentum instantly changed the color of the wind and clouds between heaven and earth. 100-meter-long cone-shaped light burst forth from the two fingers, illuminating the dark surroundings with a dense white light. It was as if dozens of thunderbolts had appeared at the same time. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, followed by explosions of various sizes within a radius of several dozen kilometers. Xianxia was dumbstruck. He could be considered to have experienced what it meant to be the #1 expert in the world. The power of a single finger was enough to destroy the great formation that enveloped this place. The explosions in the surroundings were clearly the foundation of the formation that could not withstand such a great pressure and collapsed one after another. The rolling dark clouds were shaken by the power of one finger, swaying to the surrounding sky, revealing the terrain below. Before Xianxia could react, he had been brought down by Changchun. The three of them just happened to be standing on the cliff opposite the 9 Netherworld cavern. Ghostly wails and wolf howls rang out incessantly. Xianxia looked around and saw ghostly figures everywhere. They looked panic-stricken. They were probably frightened by the commotion caused by Changchun. Nongzhu glanced at Changchun and shook her head with a wry smile. Changchun did not show any mercy when he fought in his own territory. He just raised his hand and completely destroyed the defensive formation. It would take a lot of effort to set it up again. Humph! Changchun snorted coldly. His voice was not loud but sonorous. It spread far and wide like a substance, immediately calming all kinds of restlessness as if nothing had happened. Xianxia secretly clicked his tongue. What was majestic? This was majestic. At this moment, Yuji had already arrived with a group of ghost generals. With just a glance she confirmed everyone's guess. All of them rushed into the valley with pale faces and knelt down to pay their respects, singing in unison, "Greetings, Lord Torture Envoy." After that, they knelt down with their heads down, feeling very nervous. They didn't know why this great master came today and whether it was a good or bad thing. Xianxia looked at the crowd kneeling down below and turned to look at Changchun. He saw that Changchun was staring at the cave of the 9th Nether expressionlessly, not even bothering to look at the Ghost King below. So he coughed and made the decision without authorization, shouting, "Yuji, it's none of your business here. Go away. Don't disturb me without my permission." Yes. Yuji didn't dare to hesitate and quickly called the Ghost King to leave. Before leaving, Yuji looked back and saw Xianxia smiling at her. She immediately felt relieved and knew that it was really none of her business. She didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly left. When no one was disturbing them, Changchun said lightly, "Xianxia, lead the way." He wanted to see if this disciple could really come and go freely in the cave of the 9th Nether. Yes. Xianxia bowed respectfully. Then he quickly jumped down the cliff. In mid-air, a black flying sword flashed out of his sleeve and held him up. His whole body was instantly covered with dense black fire, and he quickly flew to the cave of the 9th Nether. A layer of transparent protective upstanding chi surged out of Changchun and Nongzhu's bodies. They kept a distance of 1 or 2 meters from Xianxia, not giving up. As soon as they entered the cave, it was like entering another world. The chilly wind wrapped with evil spirits was blowing continuously. Xianxia looked back. He knew that his speed was too slow for the two of them, so he didn't dare to delay. With a flick of his sleeves, 3 flying swords of blue fire immediately sprang out and spun out, illuminating the path ahead. Xianxia raised the speed of the flying swords to the limit, and followed the 3 flying swords of blue fire in the cave of the 9th Nether. They didn't slow down at all when they turned around, and he made full use of his flying sword's controlling skills. What he did made Changchun and Nongzhu look at each other speechlessly. Both of them had been here before, but they didn't dare to rush in the cave of the 9th Nether like this. They were not afraid of the chilly wind and black evil spirits in front, but the black evil wind blades behind them were not a joke. They were the nemesis of protective upstanding chi, and they had to be careful with their cultivation. Now they followed behind Xianxia, and the black evil wind blades that shot at them at a rapid speed immediately disappeared when they touched the black fire on his body. It was the first time for the 2 masters of soul formation stage to fly in the cave of the 9th Nether at such a fast speed. Nongzhu was amazed all the way. Fate made fools of people. Sure enough, everything had its vanquisher. Some things really couldn't be solved by the level of cultivation. Hey! Nongzhu, who was flying closely behind, suddenly found that there was a forked entrance in the place where they had just flown past. He was sure that he hadn't seen it when he came in before. Just at this moment he was almost left behind by Xianxia in front of him. He was shocked and quickly followed. Without the protection of Xianxia in this place, he would be exhausted to death if he wanted to go there alone. He didn't have the ability to protect himself like Bai Changchun did. Not long after turning a corner, the wind suddenly whistled and the resistance was amazing. With Yu Qianzhou's cultivation, he couldn't fly against the wind at all. Standing on the flying sword, he was shaken by the wind, so he had to put away the flying sword and walk. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu didn't dare to be careless and continued to follow behind him. After a few hours, Nongzhu saw the 8 powerful wind eyes for the first time. He had never been here before. The black evil wind blades were as numerous as tangles, which was really scary. He didn't care about his demeanor and carefully hid behind Yu Qianzhou. Bai Changchun already had a sword in his hand. Occasionally there were wind blades that came from tricky angles, but they were all hit by his long sword and bounced off. Presumably when he came in before, he relied on this skill. Fortunately, it didn't take long for the tunnel dug by Yu Qianzhou to appear in front of them. After the 3 of them rushed in, they were relieved. Although the tunnel was filled with black evil spirits, with Bai Changchun's and Nongzhu's cultivation, such consumption was nothing. "This is the tunnel you dug?" Nongzhu looked around and asked curiously. "At that time I couldn't pass through the wind eyes above, so I had to come up with this stupid way." Yu Qianzhou smiled embarrassedly. "It's really stupid. It's so stupid that no one can surpass you." Nongzhu murmured softly and then frowned and asked, "Just now I found another entrance in the tunnel. It didn't seem to exist when I came in before. Does it have anything to do with you?" Chapter 442. Bai Changchun also looked over. Apparently he had also found the hole. Yu Qianzhou didn't say a word as he stretched out his hand to lift the hem of his robe and took out another storage pouch from behind him. He had no choice. The bag that he hung outside was thrown away by Nongzhu. He had already taken 2 storage bags from his chest. It would be inappropriate to take another one from his chest, so he took one from his butt. "You're a genius. You can hide a storage bag on your butt." Nongzhu rolled her eyes and couldn't help but mock him. Yu Qianzhou pretended not to hear anything. He took out a flying artifact from his storage pouch and said, "I heard that nether iron is very sturdy. When I went out last time, I dug up a lot of it and asked the Jing clan of the 4 major clans to forge it into a flying artifact. That hole was left when I was digging for the nether iron." He could only say this. Otherwise, his secret of coming and going without a trace would be exposed. The 2 of them looked at the flying instrument and found that it was indeed made of nether iron. Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Using nether iron to build a flying instrument. "You've done a lot of harm to the 9th netherworld cave." Bai Changchun's doubts were solved. He didn't stop and quickly flashed to the other end of the tunnel. Nongzhu shook her head speechlessly and chased after him. When Yu Qianzhou arrived at the end of the tunnel, he found that the 2 of them were standing in front of the glowing red hole, silently watching the majestic sea of fire of the netherworld. No one knew what they were thinking. It seemed that the 2 of them could resist the side effects of the sea of fire of the netherworld with their cultivation. After a long time facing the sea of fire of the netherworld, Nongzhu asked without turning her head, "Yu Qianzhou, how far do we need to go through the sea of fire of the netherworld to reach the gate of the underworld?" Yu Qianzhou walked behind the 2 of them and said respectfully, "Not far, about 1,000 meters. Although it's not far, it's an insurmountable moat for mortals." Bai Changchun sighed. He had tried to cross the moat before but failed. He couldn't help feeling a little emotional. "If Master wants to go there, I may be able to help you," Yu Qianzhou said. Bai Changchun did not say anything. Nongzhu turned her head and glanced at him. She knew that he was proud and arrogant. His cultivation was the best in the world. Even if he wanted to go there, he would not let his apprentice help him. If he wanted to go there, he would force his way through with his own strength. In fact, Nongzhu wanted to go there and have a look, but she was a little afraid of the legendary forbidden area. What's more, he was used to being free and unfettered. He was too lazy to touch anything that was too risky. After thinking about it, he restrained his curiosity. It wouldn't be fun if he didn't return. He sighed and asked, "Yu Qianzhou, is there nothing else in front of the netherworld gate?" Yu Qianzhou thought for a moment and said, "Basically it's nothing much. There's a large stone tablet with some words written on it that forbid trespassing. Furthermore, there is some grass growing on the ground. It is the legendary resurrection grass." Since he was already here, he might as well say everything he could to prevent any new problems from arising. "Reviving grass?" Bai Changchun and Nongzhu exclaimed at the same time. The 2 turned around abruptly and stared at him with their eyes bursting with extraordinary splendor. Hearing that there really was a precious spirit grass that could prolong one's life, They couldn't help but exclaim no matter how high their cultivation was. Especially for a master like Bai Changchun who was about to die, it was impossible that it wasn't tempting. As a result, Yu Qianshou was startled. He said in astonishment, Is there any problem? No problem, no problem. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and laughed. Well, Yu Qianshou, I haven't seen that thing before. Please go and get some for me and let me see what it looks like. Yu Qianshou lowered his head and pondered for a long time. He didn't answer for a long time, but he was thinking that things had to be a little complicated. Things went too smoothly, it would be suspicious. As a result, Nongzhu was a little anxious. Bai Changchun asked, Is there any inconvenience? Well, Yu Qianshou shook his head slightly and then nodded, Master, I'm afraid it's a little troublesome. You can come and go freely here. What kind of trouble can there be? Nongzhu took a few steps closer and said suspiciously, Is there any guardian spirit beast around the resurrection grass? Or is it dangerous to pick it? Senior Nongzhu, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that. Yu Qianshou frowned and said, I've destroyed a lot of the resurrection grass in that place. Now there are not many left. If you pick it without any preparation, it will only be a waste. When he said, I've destroyed a lot of the resurrection grass, Bai Changchun and Nongzhu were a little frightened. Wait. Nongzhu raised her hand and said, Why don't I understand what you mean? You are a black sheep. Why did you destroy the resurrection grass? For alchemy, of course. Yu Qianshou said frankly. Alchemy? Nongzhu asked and suddenly showed a look of understanding. She beat her chest and stomped her feet, howling, You are such a coward. Alchemy? You are a black sheep. I understand. You can practice alchemy with anything else. Why do you have to waste this treasure? Aren't you afraid of being punished by heaven? This guy's imagination was really rich. No wonder he was a master of the soul formation stage. Yu Qianshou curled his lips and said, Senior Nongzhu, you misunderstood me. I'm not that stupid. At that time, I didn't pay attention to the method when I picked it. As a result, hundreds of them were destroyed. This guy had the intention to make fun of them. He pretended to be respectful, but in fact he was not happy. So he had to exaggerate to deliberately scare the two masters. He wanted to torture the two old guys in another way so that he would feel better. Sure enough, not to mention Nongzhu, even Bai Changchun gasped. Nongzhu's face twitched and said, You actually destroyed hundreds of resurrection grass? You are a black sheep. A real black sheep. Black sheep, tell me honestly what is going on. This resurrection grass is not a spiritual herb that belongs to the human world. When picking it, you can't touch the vitality of the human world. I didn't pay attention at that time and picked hundreds of them at once. Unexpectedly, they all turned into smoke and disappeared. Speaking of this, Yu Qianshou could not help but shake his head with a sigh. Then he said to Nongzhu, That's why I said that picking them without preparation can only be a waste. Nongzhu was stunned and said, I see. So ordinary people can't pick them? As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Qianshou waved his hand arrogantly and said, It's not that there is no way at all. At least I got 3 of them and made a furnace of 7 orifices exquisite pill. You made the 7 orifices exquisite pill? Bai Changchun and Nongzhu exclaimed again. Just as the two of them relaxed, their hearts started beating wildly again because of this fellow. People of the soul formation stage were also human. They could not resist the temptation, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Although Yu Qianshou was complacent in his heart, he still looked calm on the surface. However, someone could not calm down. Nongzhu grabbed his clothes and said fiercely, Boy, don't joke with me. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? How can a young man like you make the 7 orifices exquisite pill? Senior Nongzhu, I advise you to let go. I'm not afraid of you if we fight here. Yu Qianshou said arrogantly. His words stunned Bai Changchun and Nongzhu at the same time. Nongzhu was not angry but laughed and said, Wow. You are really powerful. I'd like to see it. With a buzz sound, a black flame suddenly burst out from Yu Qianshou's body without warning. Black fire. Nongzhu screamed and quickly let go. In the blink of an eye, she was a few meters away. Then she shouted, Yu Qianshou, how dare you fight with me? If I don't teach you a lesson today? Before she finished her words, she could not say it. Not only did Yu Qianshou retract the black fire, but he also took out a strange red pill from the storage bag in his hand. The soft red light rippled with a blood-like luster. The originally lifeless cave entrance suddenly gave people a feeling of burning passion, forming a strong contrast with the previous scene. Anyone could see the majestic energy contained in the pill. Although the color was strange, it was not comparable to ordinary pills. Nongzhu's anger instantly subsided as if nothing had happened just now. He stared with his eyes wide open and said tongue-tied, "Yu Qianzhou, could this be the seven orifices exquisite pill that you mentioned?" He could not help but be surprised. If it was really the seven orifices exquisite pill, it would be amazing. If it was taken by a mortal, it could increase his life by 50 years. If it was taken by a cultivator, it was even better. It was said that it could increase his life by 150 years. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes as if he knew who Bai Changchun was. Ignoring him, he piously held the blood-red pill in his hand and walked up to Bai Changchun. With a solemn expression, he said, "Master, when I was wandering outside, I once snatched a jade archive from a wandering cultivator. Who would have thought that it was a pill recipe jade archive left by the alchemy sect thousands of years ago? From there, I learned many alchemy techniques." Bai Changchun was moved. Nongzhu was even more surprised. The Dan sect's jade archive of the Dan sect? Let me see it. Back then, the alchemy sect had relied on their alchemy skills to stand tall in the cultivation world. However, it was precisely because there were too many people who coveted their pill recipes that the alchemy sect was exterminated. Unfortunately, although the Dan sect was destroyed, its top-secret formula was not obtained by outsiders. After the incident, the whole cultivation world could not help but sigh. If they knew this would happen, they would not have made the elixirs that could be bought in the past extinct. Although Bai Changchun and Nongzhu had lived for many years, they had only heard about the past of the Dan sect. Yu Qianzhou ignored him and continued, "Later on, this disciple was lucky enough to be accepted by Master as a disciple. In the Fey Ghost domain, all the monster kings and ghost kings presented gifts to this disciple. There was even a monster king who didn't recognize the treasure and presented the rare spirit herb, a dumbra flower." Hearing this, Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other. Nongzhu's expression seemed to be asking, "You didn't know there was such a treasure in your territory? I learned that you were near the end of your life. I knew the formula of the seven orifices elixir and obtained one of its main ingredients, the adumbra flower. In addition, I heard that there was the resurrection grass in the 9th netherworld cave. Therefore, I wanted to refine the life-prolonging elixir. I ordered the monster kings and the ghost king in the demon region to collect all kinds of spiritual herbs. As a result, most of the spiritual herbs were collected, but the resurrection grass was missing. In the end, I was curious and broke into the 9th netherworld cave to find the resurrection grass. Chapter 443. Yu Qianzhou recounted the story of how he refined the seven orifices exquisite pellet. In short, it was a series of coincidences that led to the successful refinement of the seven orifices exquisite pellet. Nongzhu clicked her tongue and said, "You rascal, why do all the good things happen to you? I've lived for so many years, yet I'm not as lucky as you." "Fate brings about the birth of a spiritual pill," Bai Changchun exclaimed. Now that Yu Qianzhou had presented the pellet to him, how could he not know that his disciple was presenting it to him? Thinking about the reason, he felt that it was the will of the heavens. Just as he was nearing the end of his lifespan, he accepted this disciple. Moreover, this disciple only had the opportunity to refine such a spiritual pill because he was his disciple. Everything was predestined. The heavens clearly wanted him to live for another 100 years. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu already believed in Yu Qianzhou's words without a doubt. No one would lie on purpose to present such a heaven-defying spiritual pill. As for what he said about robbing a loose cultivator's jade archive, the two of them had no intention of pursuing the matter. The life or death of a mere loose cultivator was not worthy of their concern. From another perspective, Yu Qianzhou had even revealed the privacy of the fight. This further proved his sincerity towards his master. "Before I formally acknowledged you as my master, I had nothing on me. I didn't even have a gift. Today I specially present a seven orifices exquisite pellet that I personally refined. Please accept it, master." Yu Qianzhou respectfully held up the spiritual pill in his palm. This fellow seemed to like to pick the right time to present gifts. Now he was not even letting Bai Changchun go. It seemed that his nature was hard to change. If he had been refining the pellet from the beginning with Bai Changchun in mind, he might not even be able to convince himself with this reason. Bai Changchun would not be interested in ordinary items. However, this item was valuable, but it was a reasonable gift. Bai Changchun could not refuse it. After a pause, he said, "I will accept your filial piety." With a wave of his palm, the spiritual pill in Yu Qianzhou's hand floated up and landed on his palm. He then kept it in his storage pouch. "Thank you, master," Yu Qianzhou said happily. Yu Qianzhou, let's discuss something. Nongzhu said with a smile. Senior Nongzhu, please speak, Yu Qianzhou replied. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and said with embarrassment, didn't you say that you refined 9 pills in one furnace? Anyway, it's useless to eat too much of it. Why don't you give me one as a greeting gift? No. Yu Qianzhou straightforwardly refused. Nongzhu was stunned and then her face darkened. Old Bai, your disciple is really stingy. Bai Changchun was speechless. He understood what Nongzhu meant. She wanted him to pressure Yu Qianzhou with his identity as her master. But how could he open his mouth for such a thing? Senior Nongzhu, it's not that I'm stingy. Yu Qianzhou explained, 9 spiritual pills are too precious. If I show my face in the cultivation world, I'm afraid it will cause a bloody storm. So I hid them all in a secret place. This time I came back to visit you, master, so I took one with me. As for the other 8, they are not with me at all. You. Nongzhu was stunned and said helplessly, okay, I won't force you. But remember to leave one for me. No, it's 2. Zi has helped you for such a long time. No matter what, you should leave one for her, right? Damn it. Do you want to leave one for your woman, Jasper Flower Fairy? Yu Qianzhou was speechless. They were both masters of Huashan realm. Why was there such a big difference in their characters? That's it. Don't regret it. Nongzhu waved her hand and made a decision. Then she turned to the side with her eyebrows beaming. He said, eh? The other 2 looked at her and saw Nongzhu pinching her chin while facing the wall. She said eloquently, predecessors plant trees, descendants enjoy the shade. It's sad to miss the wind. I was kind enough to dig a tunnel for the descendants to enter and exit. Yu Qianzhou? Nongzhu looked back at Yu Qianzhou and said with a smile, it turns out that you didn't forget to leave your name after doing a good deed. Just for fun. Yu Qianzhou said awkwardly. Didn't you say that old Bai also left a message? Nongzhu looked around and walked to the opposite wall. She continued to read, I heard that Master had been here, so I also came to join in the fun. Since I couldn't go to Master's place, I went to have a try. The new generation excels the old. Each generation is stronger than the previous one. Yu Qianzhou was here? You again? Is it so fun to leave a message here? Nongzhu laughed happily and then looked at Bai Changchun. Old Bai, your disciple is full of ambition. Look at this sentence. The new generation excels the old. Each generation is stronger than the previous one foot. Tut. He wants to surpass you, the #1 master in the world. Damn. Nongzhu, I will *ck your daughter. Yu Qianzhou was a little flustered. He was really afraid that Bai Changchun would be unhappy. Then all his previous efforts would be in vain. He hurriedly explained, it's just a joke. Master, please don't take it seriously. So what if it's true? Bai Changchun stared at the relic left by Yu Qianzhou on the wall. He nodded slightly and said, if you can surpass me, I will only be happy and not angry. I am lonely and invincible in the world, but I have no fate to go to heaven. I have long heard that the netherworld is equal to the celestial world. I want to find a strong opponent. The fire sea of the netherworld separates the 2 worlds. Bai Changchun returned with hatred. Well, I don't need to look at the back to know that it's old Bai's tone. Nongzhu compared their handwriting and suddenly asked, Yu Qianzhou, have you ever been educated? Yu Qianzhou was stunned and replied, I have. What's wrong? He was confused by Nongzhu's sudden words. Tut. No wonder you dared to leave a message in the 9th netherworld cave. Even if the ghosts and deities of the netherworld come out, I'm sure they will be scared away by your words. I Nongzhu admire you. Nongzhu was overjoyed and said with a smile. Yu Qianzhou was touched on the sore spot of his second life. He blushed and said angrily, Senior Nongzhu, do you still want the 7 orifices exquisite pill or not? Yes. I was wrong. I made a slip of the tongue. Nongzhu apologized, but the smile on her face became more and more arrogant. Bai Changchun couldn't help but chuckle when he heard their conversation. It could be seen that Yu Qianzhou had really integrated into this small circle. Yu Qianzhou's face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Nongzhu stopped laughing and a cold light flashed out of the storage bag. He held a sword with one hand and shouted with great flourish on the wall of the netherworld iron cave, Nongzhu of the South Sea has been here. The sword, which was infused with strong cultivation, danced in the air and 8 elegant and refined characters appeared on the wall of the netherworld iron cave. Nongzhu put away the sword and even nodded with satisfaction. Yu Qianzhou looked at it and had to admit that Nongzhu's handwriting was as handsome as his. However, Yu Qianzhou's face became increasingly gloomy. Of the 3 of them, his handwriting was the ugliest. It was simply shameful to display it here. He wanted nothing more than to smooth out his handwriting right now. Bai Changchun smiled and said, "Well, we can't stay here for long. Let's go back." After saying that, protective upstanding chi gushed out of his body and flashed away. Nongzhu winked at Yu Qianzhou and laughed out loud. Then she left as well. As soon as the three of them left the Netherworld cave, Bai Changchun grabbed Yu Qianzhou's arm again and flew to Shantian Island. As they flew away, Yu Ji, who was standing restlessly in the hall of the Ghost King, murmured to herself, "Have they left?" At this time, the bearded ghost General Zhang Ling came in and cupped his hands. "Madam, the punishment envoy and Mr. Yu have returned." The ghost generals in the hall were relieved when they heard the news. The change of weather in the sky was too horrible. In particular, that frightening ray of light had instantly destroyed the defensive formation of this place. In the hands of such an expert, such a large formation did not even have the slightest bit of defensive ability. How could people not be terrified? The punishment envoy's means were earth-shattering once he showed them. Who is the other person beside the punishment envoy and Mr. Yu? Do any of you know him? Yuji looked around and asked. The ghost generals in the hall racked their brains but could not think of anyone. They all shook their heads. The bearded ghost General Zhang Ling said in a low voice, "Madam, judging from the situation when they left, Mr. Yu's flying speed was a little slow, so he was taken away by the punishment envoy himself. The other person could catch up with the punishment envoy, so he should be a master of the Huashan realm." Another Huashan realm? The hall was full of discussion. Yuji revealed a bitter smile. The little disciple from back then was now surrounded by such powerful people. It was truly hard to predict what would happen in the world. Fortunately, she had taken a gamble back then. Thinking of this, Yuji shook her head slightly and sighed to the crowd. "We shouldn't talk about the punishment envoy. General Zhang Ling, give the order to rearrange the protective formation." The ghost generals obeyed the order. As soon as the three of them returned to Shantian Island, Ziyi, who was chatting with Lady Mu, immediately followed them. Only Lady Mu stood far away and dared not to approach without being called. They walked into the big house. Bai Changchun stood silently for a while with his back to the crowd. Then he suddenly turned around and said, "I want to take the panacea. Nongzhu, protect me. You two can leave." Nongzhu nodded seriously and said, "Ziyi, you and Yu Qianzhou are not allowed to come close without permission. Let Senior Bai be at ease and let the elixir work to its best state. You all can leave now." She took the lead and walked out of the room. When Yu Qianzhou and Ziyi bowed and left, they found that Nongzhu had already reached the roof and was sitting on it with her legs crossed, motionless. Seeing such a serious situation, the two secretly clicked their tongues and hurriedly walked away. When they came to the lake, Yu Qianzhou found a flat place to lie down peacefully. He crossed his legs and swung them. He was secretly proud of himself. Ziyi, who followed him, was full of curiosity. She sat beside him and looked around. Then she bent down and whispered in his ear, "Yu Qianzhou, what panacea does Senior Bai want to take? Tell me about it." "I can't tell you. If you want to know, ask your master." Yu Qianzhou tilted his head to one side. Ziyi's pretty face turned cold. She shouted in a low voice, "Are you going to tell me or not?" "No." Yu Qianzhou shook his head unwillingly. Unexpectedly, his neck was tightened. Ziyi turned over and sat on him. She strangled his neck and threatened, "Are you sure you won't tell me?" Such an ambiguous position, coupled with the soft buttocks on his lower abdomen, made Yu Qianzhou dumbfounded. What else could he say? Nongzhu, who was guarding on the roof, had already spread her divine sense around. Within the scope of her divine sense, even the slightest movement could not be hidden from her, not to mention such a big movement. Nongzhu opened her eyes and mouth wide. She was so shocked that she almost fell down from the roof. You're tuning in to this Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.